You're smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in.
Thank God it's Friday!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Michael Schur with you guys. We're gonna have an amazing show. So first off, we've got a lot of news on the government shutdown. Of course, Donald Trump says, hey, don't worry about affordability. What's the big deal? It's not like I won the election on it. Okay, so we'll get to that in a little bit. Lots of turmoil on the Republican side. And speaking of which, look, the things I'm excited about, the Great Awakening, it's here. So Joe Rogan, defying Trump and others, and basically starting to talk about corporate rule. Yes, we've been saying it for 20 years, and now at once it feels like the whole country's beginning to wake up. And then Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro in the second hour. MAGA civil war continues, and I'm here for it. So don't miss any of it, Michael.
Yeah, let's not miss MAGA civil war. But first, let's start with this and MAGA.
I don't want to hear about the affordability because right now we're much less. The affordability is much better with the Republicans. The only problem is the Republicans don't talk about it. And Republicans should start talking about it and use their heads because we have great numbers. We have greatest, and they're going to only get better when all these jobs open up, all these factories open up that are being built all over our country.
When all these jobs open up, I love when he says those things because he took away the person who gives the jobs report. So we're not even gonna know when those jobs open up. So how would these Republicans be able to message? But the president is also actually play acting. He's pretending that the economy is working really, really great for the average American. And the polling, if it is in fact accurate, Cenk, Trump's not going to be able to walk away from this issue.
Yeah, so we'll break down the lies that he had there and other clips that we're about to show you. But I think two of the most interesting parts of this story are the polling that we're talking about. Like how badly is Trump and the Republicans hurt by this issue? And let me say that it's pretty bad, okay, but you're gonna see the depth of it in a second. And then
pretty bad also might be you on the US penny there.
I'm in favor of it. The people are talking about it.
Well, now they're gonna really talk about getting rid of the penny.
All right, so let's tell you about the kind of trouble the Republicans are in.
Yeah, they are. Since election night on this past Tuesday, the president has insisted that Republicans are doing a great job in their handling of the economy, including saying this on his Truth Social. Here's President Trump. 2025 Thanksgiving dinner under Trump is 25% lower than 2024. Thanksgiving dinner under Biden, according to Walmart. My costs are lower than the Democrats on everything, especially oil and gas. So the Democrats' affordability issue is dead. Stop lying. That got hit with a community note on X. And that community note only happens when things are specious, missing context. The 2025 Walmart Thanksgiving meal contains 15 items, while the 2024 meal contained 21 items. Additionally, most of the brand name items in the 2024 meal were replaced with great value items, which I think it's so funny when they break that stuff down.
So Mike, I'm gonna jump back in for a second on that because look, guys, he says affordability is better with Republicans. Generally not true. I'm not going to break down decades of data for you guys, but if you don't, if you believe Trump on that, no problem. Okay, but the real problem isn't really Republicans or Democrats on that one. It's the corporate rule, in my opinion. For 40 to 50 years now, wages have stagnated while prices have gone up. And corporate media doesn't really talk about it. The corporate politicians don't really talk about it. So that's a bigger issue there. But when he said the Republicans don't talk about our success, and that's really the issue here. No, it's the exact opposite. The Democrats actually did pretty well on unemployment, for example, under Biden, and they never ever talked about it, right? Whereas if Trump does anything slightly good, he can't stop talking about it. Right. And he demands that everybody else go on TV and talk about it, by the way, which is not bad political strategy. The lying is the annoying part. So gas low under me, now it's down to $2. No, it's not. They did a fact check. It's at over $3. So he just has no attachment to the facts. But later in this story, we're also going to show you Anna and Steve Bannon kind of agreeing, not on the solutions, but on the problem. And the Anna part's not surprising. The Steve Bannon part's super surprising. So some on the right are beginning to wake up. Oh, this is a massive issue.
Right, and what Trump's saying when he's talking about, just to continue this for a second, when he's talking about this messaging, is I'm willing to sit here and lie. Where are the other Republicans sitting here and lying with me, right? And messaging has not always been the problem of the Republicans, been the problem of the Democrats. And I think even now with this shutdown, I don't think enough Americans know that the Democrats are holding out for health care. I don't think it's well known. If this were Republicans, they would call it the healthcare showdown. Democrats are not calling it that, and they're allowing the Republicans to call it the Schumer shutdown. But let's continue on with our great president. He was confronted about the dismal state of the economy today, but this time by a 3-time Trump voter. Take a look at this.
Regina Foley messaged me, and she says she is retired in Greensboro, North Carolina. She is a registered Republican all her life. She voted for you 3 different times, but she is not happy about how her prices have not come down that she sees. And she said this, quote, I want the Republicans to keep control of Congress in 2026, but something has to be done fast. I don't see the best economy right now. Wall Street numbers do not reflect my Main Street money. Please do something, President Trump. So I guess what do you say to Regina and people like her?
Well, I do say this. Beef we have to get down. I think of groceries. You know, it's an old-fashioned word, but it's a beautiful word. Beef we have to get down, but we've got prices way down. And think of this. Energy. She drives a car, probably, and her energy prices are way down. And energy is so all-encompassing. It's so big that when energy goes down, everything comes down.
You think prices are coming down from this?
I believe that. Yeah, I think they're coming down, but I think they're down already. I think the biggest problem is Republicans don't talk about it. They don't talk about the word affordability, and the Democrats lie about it.
I also love these voters. It says, I am a 3-time Trump voter. I am outraged about the cost of things. I want the Republicans to keep the Congress in 2026. It always baffles me. Let's just have a little more of Trump, and then we'll talk about it. He was continuing to talk about it yesterday. Here's your president.
CNBC, look at this. Down now, minus 13 points on the net approval rating on the economy. You come to this side of the screen, it's minus 19 points among Quinnipiac. And keep in mind, we're talking about hitting record lows for Donald Trump in either his first term, which of course ended back in 2021, or his second term. Worst economic net approval ratings at this point among presidents since 1977. In the presidency, right, this is a new Donald Trump presidency. Look at this. He's the worst for any presidency at this point. How about the second term? Come to this side of the screen. Of course, Trump's in his second term. He's the worst for any president at their second term at this point. So Donald Trump isn't just beating himself with record lows. This is the lowest for any president ever at this point in either a presidency or for a second term.
Yeah, there's Harry Enten from CNN talking about exactly how upset Americans are with all of this. You heard the president talking about beef prices as well. And today there was a little bit of news saying that his Department of Justice will investigate if meat packing companies are illegally inflating beef prices through illicit collusion, price fixing, and manipulation. And that's why, you know, you're seeing a lot of these big prices. So you saw Harry Enten from CNN, Jank, there talking about how this is, in fact, resonating with American voters. No surprise, because if there's any, I mean, this is the old, you know, pocketbook issue. Pocketbook, it's a great word. It's an old word, but it's a beautiful word. People talk about pocketbook issues. That's what this is.
Yeah, minus 19 on the economy ain't no joke. That means you're in a world of trouble. Economy is almost always the #1 issue. And this is something he cannot lie his way out of. I know that he thinks he can lie his way out of almost anything, right? But at the end of the day, what's the price of eggs? What's the price of bread? What's the price of milk? Period. And you, even for the MAGA guys, that's why that 3-time MAGA voter was like, yeah, okay, I hear you. Yeah, Democrats, bad. I voted for you like 1,000,000 times. I'm gonna vote for you guys again. But for God's sake, are you gonna do anything? And the answer is no, don't talk to me about affordability, right? So like what he says is, oh, it's already down, when we already see that it's up. Like it's, inflation is up 2.7% since February, I believe, right? So, and to be fair, it's gone up and down. And since he took office, it's up 1.4%. So, okay, not like 8% or something, but he did not stop inflation and it continues to rise. And people are feeling that. That's the one you cannot avoid. Democrats made the same mistake. Oh, that they look, in my opinion, I think that a lot of them thought, they didn't even notice the price of milk being a problem, right? Because it's in elitist circles. And
it was also that they kept using the supply chain COVID argument that things are inflated and they're going to come down. So that was
and so but Biden and Trump share the same mistake at the end. There's plenty of mistakes all around, right? But yes, but what are you going to do about it? Right? So Biden didn't have an effective plan. He could say, yeah, supply chain, that's a problem. And you're right, he's right. There was a supply chain problem. It did cause some degree of inflation. But what did you do about it? Nothing, or certainly not enough. Trump has the same exact issue. He's like, no, I'm just gonna lie my way out of it and say the prices are down, and hence I don't need to do anything. No, you need to do something. And he's just not doing it. And so it's not gonna fly. He's gonna run into that same old beautiful problem. Problem's like an old-fashioned word, and it can be beautiful. It could be ugly, but it could be beautiful. Yeah, minus 19% is a disaster.
And he got away with these lies as a candidate twice and nearly 3 times. And he's now the president, and he's a president who cannot run legally for office again. So these things are gonna matter more, these lies and this obfuscation about what is true about the economy. Americans aren't buying it. That 19% number is unbelievable. Cenk, you talked about something that Anna said on Wednesday about the affordability crisis in America being so profound. Not to mention that she also sounds a little bit like, Steve Bannon. And let's take a listen to this. Again, they're not saying the same things. They're far different, but listen.
Calling him a socialist didn't hurt him in this election, because if you look at Democratic voters, many of whom live here in New York City, they are super skeptical of capitalism. Sure. Because of the crony capitalism they've been dealing with. They don't see a future for themselves in this country in terms of being able to afford a house, be able to get married and have children. So young Democrats who were very much galvanized by Mamdani's message were not put off by his message of socialism. They liked it.
So and there you have what Anna was saying, and now take a listen to what Steve Bannon said, striking a similar chord.
We're not communist. We're actually capitalist. The problem with our system is we don't have any capitalists. They got all these interviews with kids and polls with kids that come back. These kids hate capitalism. They're all socialists. Well, hey, they never had a shot at capitalism. They're at the receiving end of corporatism. The Russian serfs. Did the Russian serfs sit there and did they love capitalism? No, they'd never seen it. And what they saw of it wasn't good. We need more people on our side of the football. We need more capitalists. One way to give them capitalism, not just better wages, that's income. Let's get them a little buy-in to the financial. Let's get them bought into the financial structure of the country. You can do that by reallocation. It's simple. The government should have stakes in this. These guys are grifting off you. They've socialized the risk. You're the sucker that's going to guarantee the loans. You're the sucker that's paying for all the everything that underpins it. While they put these little companies together and they make it $1 trillion, it's all for them. No, it doesn't work like that.
Bannon talking about government guarantees, which is an interesting turn. Let's go to this one graphic before we get to some other people who agreed about the American dream, to what Anna said and to what I think Steve Bannon was saying. Nearly 70% of people, this is number 5, said they believe the American dream, that if you work hard, you will get ahead, no longer holds true or never did. That's the highest level in nearly 15 years of these types of surveys. So these people are definitely onto something, and Republicans are scared because it's Republicans who believe in that dream and espouse that dream, just like Democrats do. Eric Erickson, the conservative radio host, said grocery prices are going up, and now Republicans are perversely doing the same thing Democrats did when they were in office with Joe Biden, saying, quote, no, actually, don't believe your eyes at the grocery store. Prices are coming down. That's just what we heard the president say. That's not helpful to Americans who are feeling higher grocery costs right now, which is actually happening. The Republicans have got to figure this out. So, Cenk, I think that's all pretty compelling stuff about what the panic, the real panic and the real politic panic at the grassroots level in Republican politics is onto.
Yeah, totally. This goes beyond just Republican and Democratic politics. This goes to an awakening that's happening in the country. First on Anna's appearances on CNN are hilarious in one way. She'll say things that are super popular with younger people that are online, et cetera. Like a couple of nights ago, she said, well, yeah, Mamdani says we should arrest Netanyahu. Well, and of course we should. He's committed war crimes and he's been, there's an arrest warrant for him. And the conservative on the panel was like, that's it, we win. She wants to arrest Netanyahu. Like as if that's a super unpopular position, when in reality that's actually a super popular position. Same thing kind of happened here, where she's like, a lot of young people don't mind Mamdani being socialist because they're socialists. And Shapiro for a second there had a look of like, we win. No, you don't win. That's the whole point. That people are beginning to give up on your ideology and your market model. Now there's an irony here because I'm a capitalist. And so there's some portions of Bannon that I agree with, but we're identifying the same problem. Before, in my opinion, the problem was hidden by mainstream media. No, don't worry, like your wages are not a huge issue. They haven't gone up in 45 years, adjusted for inflation, but it was like it almost never made the news, right? And it never made the news because the Democrats never pounced on it, the Republicans never pounced on it. No one in power ever talked about it. But meanwhile, the problem was accumulating corporate rule, accumulating the donors controlling everything, accumulating. So now we've gotten to a point where right wing sometimes will call it crony capitalism. There's nothing wrong with that phrase. That's absolutely true. Some on the left, including me, call it corporatism, but I've now seen Steve Bannon call it corporatism, right? And so and that's the same thing. That's basically corporations through their campaign donations buying off our politicians and redirecting everything towards them and away from you. So sorry that I keep pounding this to death, but because it's so outrageous. So an excellent example of that is the oil companies getting $35 billion a year in subsidies. That's 10 times what Israel gets. And they're the most profitable companies in the world and they have no excuse. Their industry is perfectly mature. It's a robbery. It's a robbery. So Bannon realizes the problem, we realize the problem. Some on the right that are more populist are realizing the problem, and a lot of their voters, tons of their voters are starting to realize the problem. Then the question becomes, yes, but what's the solution, right? So Steve Bannon had a curious one that you kind of noticed, Michael, which is he was kind of saying we should do wealth redistribution to protect capitalism. Right. Which was deeply ironic.
Let's go socialist to protect capitalism.
I mean, he's like, no, they're going socialist. We got to stop it by going socialist before them.
Right.
Okay, fascinating, fascinating. The funny thing is, since I'm a capitalist, I think that's a little too left wing for me. Okay, so you don't need to punish the rich.
Andrew Yangonomics there.
Yeah. You don't need to do it, but what you need is for your representatives to actually represent you. And what that means is that, guys, corporatism is opposed to capitalism because it doesn't want competition. the minute a corporation is born, one of the things that it tries to do is eliminate all of its competition. So corporations by their nature are going to be against free markets. Yes, that's deeply ironic, but very true. And so now then the question is, how do you protect free markets from the corporations that want to kill it? And so I don't think the idea is necessarily redistribution in a like kind of ham-handed way. The idea is for the government to protect us from the corporations instead of serving the corporations. And you do that through 1,000 ways. You break up monopolies that can set prices unilaterally and oligopolies. There's regulations to protect consumers. For example, with the banks, they take wild, out of control risk, and that winds up collapsing the economy and costing us so much money. And a lot of times the banks just literally rob us, right? And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for example, was doing a fantastic job of catching them and returning billions of dollars to the American people. One of the first things that Trump did was, let's get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And then he went around, we were almost the only show that talked about it, getting rid of almost every white collar fraud department within like the SEC, the IRS, all these different agencies. He's like, don't overlook the corporations at all. Let them go nuts. Let them steal all they want. Let them, no regulations, right?
And also getting rid of their legal departments too, not just them, but taking away any kind of a legal muscle that they would have to protect themselves in that way.
Yeah, so now we're in this dark place where over 70% of Americans think that the American dream is dead. So the old school guys, the corporate Democrats and Republicans and Trump don't get it. They're like, oh, we'll just lie our way out of this. We'll just pretend the problem doesn't exist. We've been pretending for 40, 50 years and the media covers our ass. But now mainstream media is dying and online media is going, no, I don't think so. Later in the show, we're gonna show you Joe Rogan saying the same thing. If Joe Rogan, Steve Bannon and us are agreeing on the problem, that's pretty compelling. Of course, again, back to the solution for one last second. One of the other angles that, so when Bannon talks about economic populism, he's half right, right? But then when you get to the solution and you get to Bannon, so I would put it this way, Fuentes at the extreme, then Bannon, then Tucker and others, on like some version of white or Christian nationalism, right? And I used to think that Tucker used to dog whistle to that a lot more. I think he's actually gotten better on it, whereas Fuentes has gotten as bad as you can be, and Bannon has gotten worse. So the idea is to go backwards, have white people or Christian people or whatever subset that they think they're in have all the power. How does that help everybody? That doesn't help people at all. That's just you saying, yeah, times are tough, so that's why I should be in charge. That's not a solution. Our solution is actual populism. Serve the voters. You got to end the money in politics. If you don't end the bribery, this is going to go on forever and ever and ever. Who do you think they're going to serve? You or the guy who gave him $1 million or $10 million or $100 million? Everyone knows the answer. So the number one cancer is money in politics. That's where we got to start to get out of this corporate rule nightmare we're in.
Yeah, there's no question. All right, agree with you, Cenk.
Oh, look at that, even Michael agrees. All right, so now that we got Michael to agree with Steve Bannon, we can move on. Yeah. Okay, so the truth behind the SNAP payments, because there's a couple of things that is not being made clear in the media, and they're really important, so we'll do that when we return.
The word grocery, it's sort of simple word, but it sort of means like the stomach is speaking.
All right, back on TYT. On Super Chat, YTP Renewed asks, did Bannon practice pre-2021 what he now preaches? No. Guys, don't get it twisted. Bannon has almost none of the right solutions. That's not surprising and never has. He's kind of being forced into acknowledging the real problems these days, and it's bubbling up from the base, that's why. He's noticing everybody complaining about affordability. He's showing the polling numbers going down, and he's putting 2 and 2 together and going, oh, okay, I see what the problem is. And if I can correctly identify what the problem is, then people will believe me that I am right about the solution. So that's the game that's being played. So you have to be really careful about, no, wait, let me analyze the different solutions that are offered. Okay, Jimmy, now these are YouTube members. Jimmy Fister says, it's almost like the government shutdown is like affecting the economy with no food stamps, also less food being bought. Like crazy how that happens. Yeah, exactly, Jimmy. Hunter Drake says, Trump is only focusing on the price of beef because of McDonald's. Okay, that's funny. Ella Gofab says, yesterday my mom complained about Dems holding votes for the shutdown, and I asked her if she knew why. She said they want to give health care to illegal immigrants. I just can't if someone thinks that. Yeah, I hear you guys. Look, that's our job, right? Our job professionally, your job from time to time on your off time. There's tons of misinformation out there, and there's people that are incentivized to lie to folks. So we went through the SNAP program for you guys. Undocumented immigrants are not allowed to get SNAP, and SNAP has the lowest fraud rate of any government assistance program at 1.5%. So is it undocumented immigrants? No, not at all, not at all. And so you can give those stats to folks, etc. They're watching the wrong shows. It's okay, we're gonna get past it. Ronald Fan says, happy Friday TYT family, and to you and Cenk and Michael. Thanks for giving me the update of Crossroads Revolution. And you, Cenk, are very smart at telling the truth than Randy Fine. Well, thank you, Ronald, I appreciate it. It doesn't take much to be smarter than Randy Fine, but I'm happy I cleared the bar. No, seriously, yeah, I've been taking him on, and I'm proud to, I'm super proud to. He's really a monster. Screech said SNAP has been paid out, full benefits. Okay, good. I like to get updates from you guys on what's happening on the ground there. So in your case, you're probably in one of the 4 states we'll talk about in a second that are getting full benefits, but others are not. In Search of Video says True Social for all your propaganda needs. Well, now you know. Art Guy says Trump is spending every waking moment, the few that he has, attempting to warp reality to his festering delusions of greatness. This is on TYT.com.
I love the few that he has.
Yeah, Benjamin writes in, the Shurricane, and even includes a picture with a nice little.
Wow, look at that.
That's super fun. Thank you. I lives in America says difference between Anna and Bannon. Anna is genuine while Bannon's a grifter. Oh, also Anna is a crusty, goony monster. Okay, those are also accurate. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Michael with you guys, but also Inez Ciso, thank you for joining. There's a join button. It's a beautiful, it's old fashioned, but it's beautiful. It's right below the video. Okay, and that's what she pressed. CDN Norse Dog Dad gifted a membership on YouTube. We appreciate you guys. There's also a website. It's also beautiful. A little old fashioned, which is actually true. It's way too old fashioned.
My button is bigger than yours, and my button works.
At tyt.com/join. Okay, now let me tell you real quick about Chapter Medicare enrollment is now, and it goes through December 7th. You guys know this. Come on, like if you're on Medicare or your parents are, there's no reason not to save it. On average, $1,100. It's free. It's a 20-minute call. We did the research for you. These guys actually are the best in the business. They're the ones that are most trusted, and it's because of how they set up the payment system. So long story, I did an interview about it, but they get paid not from you guys, but by commission, but the other guys are cheesy. And when you go call the brokers, they just go for whatever pays them the highest commission. But Chapter is blind to how much they're getting paid. So that's why they're honest, and they just try to find you the best plan. So, and by the way, if you have the best plan, they tell you, so you stay on it, okay? So 707 TYT help, 707 TYT help. Call now and save a lot of money.
What date? That's through
December 7th.
Okay.
And I mean, come on, $1,100 per year is not a small number. All right, Michael.
Yeah, well, we will. We're talking about Medicare with Chapter. We will talk about different kinds of benefits. So look at this.
days into the government shutdown, this morning a federal judge accusing the White House of withholding federal food assistance for political reasons and ordering the administration to fully distribute SNAP benefits by today. Judge John McConnell saying, quote, "People have gone without for too long. Not making payments to them for even another day is simply unacceptable and causing irreparable harm," saying, quote, "The evidence shows that people will go hungry, food pantries will be overburdened, and needless suffering will occur."
So there you have it. 42 million Americans rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP, and those benefits were due, and a massive portion of them have not. Massive portion of the number of the 42 million Americans have not received those benefits this month, despite the fact that SNAP has never before lapsed during a government shutdown. With delayed November payments, millions of American families and children are now going hungry. It's serious. But after a court fight, it seems that the Trump administration is going to cave grudgingly and start sending out full payments. What say you, Jake?
So they have one interesting point that Trump lawyers did in these cases. But outside of that, there are three facts here that prove definitively whose fault this is. So we're gonna show you that and break it down for you.
So yesterday, as we heard just a moment ago, federal judge John J. McConnell Jr. of the U.S. District Court for Rhode Island ordered the Trump administration to fund food stamps in full for all Americans receiving them, meaning that the Trump administration would need to fully pay for November SNAP benefits. Although the Trump administration said partial funds would be distributed this month, a response to a lawsuit challenging its plan to suspend SNAP payments during the shutdown, recipients who were due to receive their benefits this week have empty balances. Now, this is the second time that Judge McConnell has made this order. The Trump administration didn't listen the first time, and after the latest order, the Trump administration immediately requested an appeal. The administration has asked the first U.S. Court of Appeals to issue an emergency stay of judge's ruling Thursday, ordering the administration to fully fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program by today. But the Trump administration told states earlier today that while the appeal is in progress, it will follow the judge's orders and immediately begin funding the SNAP benefits in full. We had a listener, I think, tell us that that's happened. I don't know that that's the case, but what is this case actually about? At issue is whether a federal judge can compel the government to use $4 billion from Section 32 of the Agricultural Adjustment Act Amendment of 1935 to fund November SNAP benefits. The Trump administration argues that these funds are needed to support WIC programs, that's women, infants, and children programs, and that using that money to pay for SNAP would essentially starve Peter to pay Paul. Recipients have yet, as of this report, to see anything in their accounts, and it's late Friday. So, Cenk, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, so the one good point they have there is they say to the judge, look, you say we have enough money in the agriculture department, we don't need to cut off SNAP. That's true. But some of it is in the WIC program, and we don't want to take from WIC to give to SNAP. And now you got the courts telling the executive branch how to handle their budget within the department, and that's overreaching, right? Okay, that's not that bad a point. But so now you break down the rest of it to see who's right. So, okay, here are the critical facts. Does SNAP normally get cut off in a government shutdown? Because if it does, I mean, look, there's a government shutdown. What can we do, right? But as Michael pointed out to you earlier, it's true. No, SNAP normally is not affected by a government shutdown. Second fact, Trump then comes in and says, yeah, I'm stopping SNAP, he said this earlier, so that the Democrats stop the government shutdown. So he's saying, yeah, I'm doing it for a political reason. I don't have to do it. The Agriculture Department does have plenty of money, and it normally doesn't get taken out, but I'm doing it to punish the Democrats for the shutdown. Well, then that's pretty clear, right? And then the third thing is, yeah, the Agriculture Department actually does have enough money. Like if they didn't have enough money, you could say, well, you're complaining, but what can you do? There's just, because of the shutdown, the more money didn't get allocated into their coffers and they don't have it and they can't legally go into debt. No, nothing like that exists. Even without WIC, they have enough money.
Exactly, that's the point. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry to interrupt there, but you just made the point. And the point is that the money exists. It's why I say it's a terrible argument. You said it's a good argument. I understand why their lawyers may say it's something they could do, but I think it's a terrible argument because the money is there. Look, I mean, they're not stopping payments to ICE. They're not stopping payments to protective services, the Secret Service. There are ways of taking money, and that's discretionary money that's going to pay for this ICE explosion that's happening across the country right now. That money, as Judge McConnell has said, there are people going hungry. That is not what we do in this country. So there are ways to, it's not just robbing Peter to pay Paul, because the money exists in other places and you don't need the Congress to allocate those monies. There is some executive, this is a White House that loves using executive orders. They could do an executive order and get these funds paid.
Yeah, and there's an issue of legal, there are legal issues and factual issues in any court case. So a legal issue is how much should the courts interfere in executive branch budgetary decisions, right? So that's the part where I say, oh, that's a fair issue, right? And I'm not judging it either way, but yeah, that's not outrageous.
It's a fair philosophical issue.
Yeah, yes. But then you have to also analyze the factual matters in the case. And when you do, then you go to what Michael is saying, and the judge is like, but you have enough money, even without WIC, so I'm not reallocating anything. You just gotta go. You by law, this was allocated. You're supposed to pay it. A government shutdown does not affect it by law. You're saying you're doing it for a political reason. That's okay. I mean, you can do any politics you like, but you can't mess around with the law. And the law is you're supposed to pay these people. So they're like Michael said, they're appealing, but they've started giving out full payments now because yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong on the law and the facts.
Yeah, and that's it. 42 million people, and they're going hungry, many of them, and that's why it's not a question necessarily of, whether we're telling you how to spend the money. There's taxpayer money that's going back to people who need that money. We just, as I said, 42 million people rely on SNAP. Let's take a look at this right here. This is SNAP recipients by county. Roughly 12.6% of households received SNAP benefits in the previous 12 months. In this chart, areas that are darker blue have a higher percentage of households receiving SNAP benefits. You look at some of the poorest states in the country, you look at South Texas, New Mexico, and you see so much of that's there. Households receiving supplemental nutrition, you see a huge majority of SNAP households have both either children or both, an elderly individual or a non-elderly individual with a disability. Those families, as we've come to know, are relying on food banks now and the kindness of others in order to stay fed. Some, like Gia Haley, must now make difficult decisions in order to survive. Gia Haley is trying to survive on water and coffee. Haley, 41, said she's been out of groceries since October 29th. That's 9 days with no groceries, and the monthly $298 she receives in food assistance did not arrive as it ordinarily would have this past Wednesday. The black coffee kind of kills my appetite. Is that where we are in America? Is that where we have a president and his administration fighting the mandate to send these benefits because politicians can't agree on whether to open the government up? In fact, it is where we are, Cenk, and that all you need to know is that this person has coffee and water, and she's drinking coffee because it suppresses her appetite.
Yeah, so part of the reason that while they're appealing, they're fully complying, in my opinion, is because they're beginning to see the political damage. Because Trump said just the other day, oh, SNAP, it was expanded too much by Biden, way too much, people shouldn't be getting it. Or that many people shouldn't be getting it, right? Well, everybody who's on SNAP is like, what did you say? Like, are you calling me a bum? Is that what you're, like, you know that most people on SNAP either have children, are older themselves, or are disabled, right? And so, and 12% of the country is a giant number. 12.6 actually, right? So that's 1/8 of the country that's on this program, and he's spitting in their face, saying like, I don't think you should be getting it. And so now as people literally are starting to go hungry, they're like, are you saying I'm the problem? I voted for you, mother right?
Yeah.
And so not all of them voted for him, but a ton of them voted for him. This is a political disaster. By the way, it's a moral disaster. I want to read one comment from one of our members on TYT.com. Kofefe said, let's turn that golden ballroom into a food pantry for hardworking Americans. I bet that money would go a long way to feeding some local people in need. So look, he's saying that literally, and that would, by the way, if Trump was smart, that would be genius move to do like some sort of food from the White House or something, right? And he might do a symbolic, I got a couple of Big Macs for a couple of people around here, right? But overall, the much larger point, as he's alluding to, is, wait, we're gonna spend $300 million on a golden ballroom? And you just had this great Gatsby party as you're cutting food from 42 million Americans? I mean, look.
That's a great point, though. That's it in a nutshell, right there. I mean, my thing about ICE, it's not as accurate as what that is, because that is discretionary spending the president just decided he wanted to do.
Yeah, and he didn't ask anybody. He didn't get any permission. He wanted to do it because he wanted to have nicer soirees at the White House with his frickin' donors. Let's be honest. Are you going to those? Are you going to be in that ballroom? You're not going to be in that ballroom. 98% of the people that are going to be in that ballroom are donors. So the donors are like, oh great, a golden ballroom for us, and no money for you, and no food for you. Nah, they're poking the bear, and this is a terrible idea politically and morally, and that's why they're turning around, because Trump tests things all the time. He thought he could just spit in the face of people who are in need, and he's beginning to find out politically, no, you can't. Your party's now in a lot of trouble. And part of the reason, by the way, the threat of taking away SNAP and all of these cuts from the average person and giving more and more to the wealthy elites is why they got their asses handed to them in these 2025 elections.
And wait till you start hearing over the weekend, as I'm sure you will, conservatives saying that, oh, it's going to illegals. The SNAP money is going to illegals. They're people that shouldn't be getting it in the first place. Not true. And even if there's, like any entitlement program, even if there are some leaks in the boat, you don't sink the ship just because of some leaks in the boat. But people are already going to be saying that, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, who is the current Democratic leader? Who should it be? Should it be anyone? I have I'd like to think an interesting point about that, but we'll find out when we come back.
I started using the word, the groceries.
Back on TYT, let's go to YouTube members on TYT.com. Simply B said, I was approved for SNAP. They gave it to me for 2 weeks and then boom, gone. So right back in later, at the beginning of next week if you can, and tell us if your SNAP payments really did come back as they're promising to do now. So that's got to be super frustrating, obviously. Jenks left tricep for a fury said, I guess we need to send our kids to Argentina and Israel to get fed since they have all our money. They have a lot of our money. The 40 billion to Argentina. By the way, if you don't know, I mean, we talked about it earlier, but it's not, so like the fact that Milei kisses Trump's ass and is like extreme right winger definitely helps them in getting that money. But number 1 through 9 reasons why they got that money is because a bunch of hedge fund guys had bet on Argentina's debt. And if we didn't bail them out, those hedge funds would have lost a lot of money and they're donors to Trump. So they called in a favor. They're like, why don't you give them $40 billion? That way we'll get paid off on our bet. And then if Argentina collapses and America loses the 40 billion, who cares? We already made the money.
Yeah, it's total fix.
Yeah. Wang Jun says the leader of the country is letting his own people starve. I guess you either die a Trump or live long enough to see yourself turn into Stalin. And by the way, for the Republicans out there, that is not any kind of threat. That's a line from a song, okay? Theater Goddesses can confirm that some states have paid out in full. New Jersey, high taxes, strong social safety net. I like how New Jersey's the Northern Europe of America. Funkin' for Fun says, politician, oh, don't worry, the working class can take another hit. Oh, wait, they can't? F. Well, that's what a lot of folks are saying these days. The politicians are too. Dirge says, by the way, you mentioned Republican politicians. This is not in the show today, but it just randomly popped into my head. Tommy Tuberville said that New York will be all Muslim in 3 to 4 years.
He could be the dumbest man in Congress.
Yeah. No, we had it as official, but he's stepping down, so we got to find a new guy. He took over from Louis Gohmert.
Right. Well, yeah, and Jim Inhofe, by the way, but the late James Inhofe.
Yeah, it's a tough competition for that.
Anti-Semitism.
Dirge says, that's funny. Dirge says, Vance says it's absurd that judges are allowed to rule against them. He probably does think that, and he did say that. The Pupper Zone said, pure capitalism is just as bad as pure socialism or pure communism. We need a combination of different styles. That is what we currently have. Even businesses don't want pure capitalism because it's wild, wild west. In fact, they're the biggest beneficiaries of government intervention and socialism, as Cenk has said over and over again. So the only caveat I would say to that is, it depends on what you mean by capitalism. Like socialism is the worst defined concept in the history of the world, certainly in this country. But capitalism also is not very well defined because as Adam Smith explained capitalism, it needs regulation. It needs the government to break up monopolies, etc. So you really can't have capitalism without a mixed economy, which is what we have now.
The word grocery, but it sort of means like everything you eat.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Michael with you guys. Gal for 75 is a good, long-standing member. He's on Twitch, and he wrote in, now we have like 4 cell phone providers, 4 railroads, soon to be 3, like 4 gas companies, and a crap load of other monopolies. That's totally right, except for one thing. All of a sudden, we have another cell phone provider, and it's called Noble Mobile. Okay, so guys, I did the switch. When I was doing the switch, from Verizon to Noble, I was worried about a couple of things. Am I gonna get to keep my phone number, all my contacts, and am I gonna have the same cell service I had before? Boom, 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 all of them. You don't have to worry about it. You definitely keep your phone number, keep your contacts, nothing changes. The only thing that changes is your bill, whatever it is, $100, $140, $89, goes down to $50. And then on top of that, if you don't use all your data, they give you money back at the end of the month. So, but on the $50 alone, I mean, go check your bill. I did it myself a week ago. I'm positive nothing's gonna change for you. If it turns out, by the way, you have bad service for whatever quirk of the cell towers and stuff like that, you could just switch back. And by the way, when you try to switch back, Verizon or AT&T is gonna offer you a ton of cash to switch back. So there's no downside to this. Go.tyt.com/switch, go.tyt.com/switch. You pretty much, unless you're paying less than $50 a month, you're pretty much guaranteed to save money. And so I love it. It's a good partner for us, and it saves you guys a ton of money. On average, you save about $500 a month. All right, Michael.
All right, well, we've listened to the president. We've listened to some of his surrogates. Now, let's listen to the people with this.
Who do Democrat voters want as the future of their party?
It would be pretty cool to see Kamala Harris kind of take that role up again.
Yeah, I think it's an easy answer to say Gavin Newsom, but there may be somebody else out there that we're not aware of.
Pritzker, governor of Illinois. I don't think he's afraid of Trump.
I do like the approach that people like Andy Beshear in Kentucky have taken, though.
Hakeem Jeffries, I guess. I just think that he needs to be a little more forceful in his actions.
Michelle Obama.
So, Democrats had a marvelous victory on Tuesday, a big victory, but the party is still facing a big question right now as to who their leader is. Some people think it's Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom, but a damning new poll, or a poll that we can discuss whether or not it's damning, from Politico found that many Democratic voters have absolutely no idea who their leader is. We'll get to the results of that poll in a second, but first, Cenk, your 2 cents on this.
Yeah, so I like who came in number one, and it's not a person. And I'm gonna tell you why I like that so much after Michael gives you the facts about the rankings.
Okay, well, here are in fact those rankings. Cenk teased number one. This Politico poll found a total lack of consensus among 2024 Kamala Harris voters when asked who they consider to be the leader of the Democratic Party. Don't know is in first place with 21%, Kamala Harris 16%, nobody. I don't know if nobody and don't know are the same, but I think nobody is in first place because nobody has a majority here. Chuck Schumer 7.7, Hakeem Jeffries 7.4, former President Barack Obama 7.4, and Gavin Newsom at 6.2. The top response was I don't know, made up of 21%, and when you look at the people who have the name leader after their names, that's Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, neither of them were able to break 8%. Then we go to the poll continues. Former President Biden at 4.4. General answer is 2.9%. I don't know what that is. Ken Martin, who actually runs the DNC, at 2.2. Other name or unclear name, 2.1. Bernie Sanders, who is actually not a Democrat, at 1.9%, Hillary Clinton 1.2%, and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 1%, or a little over 1%. Here were some of the verbal answers people gave when asked who the Democratic leader was. No one was a 26-year-old white woman in Arizona who voted for Harris. Not sure who it is now. That is kind of the problem, says 50-year-old white woman in California who voted for Harris. And I do not believe there is a leader right now, says 49-year-old white man in Maryland who also voted for former Vice President Harris. It's not just the voters who feel like the party is in limbo. Even Democratic insiders aren't sure who their leaders are. Lauren Harper Pope, a Democratic strategist and co-founder of Welcome Pack, says, this is where we are, guys. The party is divided factionally and ideologically, she said. I couldn't tell you who the leader of the Democratic Party is either, and I work in Democratic politics. So, Cenk, I think we'll have a lot to discuss here.
Yeah, no, I love that don't know is winning. Why is that a problem? I don't know why that's a problem. In fact, I think the reverse is a problem. Whenever we've had a clear Democratic leader, not whenever, but certainly recently in the last 20 years, I would argue, it's been a disaster. The clear leader of the party is Joe Biden, so we all have to listen to Joe Biden. But the brother's got dementia and he's falling apart at the seams and he's intensely selfish and he says he doesn't want to go. Doesn't matter, he's the leader, everybody listen to the leader.
Well, he was president at that time, so he was in fact the leader.
Yeah, I got you, but turned into a disaster. But more importantly, guys, than Biden is the idea that we all have to listen to the leader. Okay, so the Democratic leadership generally has been more establishment figures my entire lifetime. And they have demanded complete obedience, and they love to anoint candidates, and they like to announce like, oh, even before anybody's won anything, Hillary Clinton is going to be the new leader of the Democratic Party. But we didn't vote on it yet. No, why is Bernie Sanders even running? He's ruining unity. Wait, you guys are assuming Hillary Clinton's the leader. We haven't voted yet. I kept saying in 2015, 16, all the way back to 2013, right? So whenever they anoint a leader, epic disaster. Hillary lost to Trump. Kamala Harris lost to Trump. You can't get a bigger disaster than losing to Trump. The leaders tend to be very selfish, very corrupt. So I don't need some sort of Democratic leader telling me what to think and what to do. And if that is their job, they're miserable at it. So the last time the Republicans did not have a clear leader was in 2015. How did that turn out for them? Well, they had this mess of a primary, and in that 17 people ran, and in that giant scrum, a guy emerged. And now we don't like that guy who emerged, but he's won the presidency twice, and he's given the Democrats huge losses. Why? Because they didn't know who their leader was, and they looked around and decided to use their own judgment to pick the guy they thought that they liked best, or the one that they thought was most likely to win. And again, no one believed the Republican voters. They're like, oh, you idiots, you're picking Donald Trump. He's definitely not gonna win. Stupid voters. How did that turn out? So I trust the voters way more than I trust anyone in politics or media. So I love that the Democrats don't know who their leader is. Good. Let's go find, that's our job, to go out there, have them run an amazing primary in 2028, right? And let's see who the leader actually is after we vote. You guys decide who the leader is.
Yeah, it's such a stupid poll I mean, we're sitting here telling you about it, but I think it doesn't matter. That whenever somebody doesn't have the president, there's a question of who the standard bearer, the leader of the party is. It used to be that a former president would have that position, or the most recent former president. President Biden is not that type of a person, and likely not in the condition to do that at the moment anyway. So, but it isn't, the notion of a leader. At the end of the 90s, the Republicans didn't have a leader. Dan Quayle was thought of as someone who could run for president, President Bush's former vice president, because they didn't have a leader, and then George W. Bush showed up, and that went that way. But this isn't something that happens. There's no leader because the leader is always the president. And this is a party that, it doesn't mean they're in disarray because they don't have a leader in a poll. It just means that they don't know who the leader is because they shouldn't, because there's no leader yet. I agree with you, Cenk. I agree that these sort of things are silly because it makes it sort of attaches an ineptitude to the party over not having leadership. They shouldn't have a leader yet. They don't know what they're leading. They're in the minority in both houses of Congress, and the presidential election hasn't happened. And are there leading voices? Yes, I would argue that the leading voice in the party right now, in practical matters, is probably Chuck Schumer, and in esoteric matters is probably Governor Newsom. But they're not the leaders of the party because they haven't been. They're not there yet. So I agree with you, Cenk. I don't think these things matter, and I don't think you could have a leader now when you're out of party and out of power anyway.
Yeah, and so let me expand upon what you're saying. So Gavin Newsom is among the folks that you would consider in the category of potential leader, right?
Yeah, a leading voice, certainly.
Yeah, right? And so how did he get there? Partly because he's the governor of the largest state, that makes sense, right? And partly because he's trying hard in different ways to rise up, right? So first he went and talked to the right wing, and that didn't work out great, but it was at least, I thought it was a decent effort. Not executed perfectly, but made sense to try to do something, right? And now he's fighting Trump harder than anyone else, at least rhetorically, optically, etc. That's good. See, that's how you want people to prove themselves. So, how we feel about Gavin Newsom overall might be a different question, but in terms of how he's handling this, that makes sense. Then you've got Ro Khanna, who most people in media would say, oh no, he's a congressman. Yeah, he was the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and he's going to run for president. He's he's a legit guy, etc. But I don't know about leader, right? I mean, they're not even including him in some of the polls. But the reason why I introduce him in this conversation is because he's the one guy that is the most active in Congress, constantly introducing bills, going in media, making the case for democratic policies, progressive policies. I mean, you see him fighting 24/7, finding allies on the right like Tom Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Epstein files, finding 3-4 significant right-wingers on lowering drug prices, like super active. To me, that's the best way to become a leader. And then you of course have the problem that the media almost always skews everything. Just any perspective will skew a conversation, including ours, right? But for mainstream media, they love the big names already. They're just obsessed with the powerful. So that's why Michael's example is right. They're like, okay, Dan Quayle is going to be the leader of the Republican Party. Meanwhile, the whole country's, or anybody that was paying attention, like, really? Dan Quayle's an idiot. So I don't think he's gonna survive that primary, but there was talk of no, it's Dan Quayle. Then of course you remember in 2016, Jeb Bush. If it's not Jeb Bush, it's Marco Rubio. I mean, how many times are they going to be wrong before we realize?
That's the example that Cenk just gave, right? I mean, it's easy to say Gavin Newsom now. Nobody knows who Ro Khanna is, right? But by the time it comes time to pick a leader, people are going to know who that was. Who was the leader for the mayor's race in New York? Was it Zoran Mamdani? No, it wasn't. But that's who became the leader because the time happened. So if they took a poll 2 years ago, Mamdani's name wouldn't have been on it. So that's why these things are silly. Do you think Barack Obama's name would have been on a poll in 2007 of who the leader of the party was? Cut to a year and a half later, and he's the president and he's twice elected. So it's all name recognition. It's silly, and the fact that nobody thinks there's a leader is more refreshing than if there was one there.
100% agreed. Last two fun facts. When you get all the way to the bottom of the poll, speaking of Mamdani, he's tied at, they just both have 0.3%, so de minimis, but he's tied with Pete Buttigieg. We were told that Pete Buttigieg was going to be our leader, and now he's at 0.3% with Mamdani, who showed up yesterday.
Right. Better news, worse news for Buttigieg than it is good news for Mamdani.
That's definitely right. But last thing, guys, to Michael's point, when Mamdani started the mayor's race, he was polling at 1%. When Donald Trump, people forget this, when Donald Trump came down the golden escalators, he was polling at 1%. So you don't know who's going to be the leader until you have a process to pick the leader. And if you don't go through that process, you're almost always going to get a worse candidate. So nothing wrong with tough, strong primaries where we test people and find out who can lead. So, all right, hopefully we'll do that right this time. All right, guys, we got to go. I did do one misstep earlier. I wanted to correct real quick. I said Noble Mobile saves you $500 a month. That would be awesome, but no, $500 a year on average. Okay, nevertheless, go.tyt.com/switch. Okay, we'll be right back. There's one reason why healthcare is so messed up in this country, and that's because of our money in politics situation. Because those industries that are deeply corrupt can just simply purchase all of Congress. And then the problem never gets fixed because of that bribery. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's greed, and it's the greed of politicians, right? I mean, so everything they do is dictated by the donors and the money. I mean, I shouldn't say that, not everything. A lot of what they do is, and I do think that there are people who do things in spite of the fact that they have to raise money and often don't get that money and often don't win because they don't, but are in there fighting for ideals that they believe in. Bernie Sanders is certainly an example of someone like that.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you, or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
You want to know the 3 shows that I'm watching lately? Shogun, Anjin-san. Those guys are badasses. Then you go to the Duttons, Yellowstone. Now they don't always do it right, but they are badasses. But the 3rd show has the biggest badasses of all, the Young Turks. Live every weekend. Sick that I was so good. God damn it. Okay, live. Weekdays at 6 o'clock Eastern. That's what I meant. Anjin-san.
How do you know if you're a populist? Easy. Do you work for the donor class? You don't? Great, you're a populist. Okay, so the establishment takes money from the donors and serves the donors. Mainstream media takes money from advertisers, and they are giant corporations themselves, and they work for themselves, and they work for the powerful. If you care about the average person, and you want the average person to have better health care, better wages, a better life, and you hate corruption, congrats, you're a populist.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
TYT. Cenk Uygur and Sharon Reed with you guys. What's up, Sharon? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm rock and roll, sister. Okay, let's do some stories.
Yeah, why don't we? Let's do Rogan rant, Cenk. Yesterday, during a conversation with actor Russell Crowe, Joe Rogan made a point that, well, I think it's fair to say most Americans can agree with about the epidemic of political corruption.
We're trying to say that you're either red or that you're blue.
Right.
The idea that you can split all of us into two camps is kind of nuts.
It's nuts.
You know?
Yeah, it's nuts. In this country in particular, I don't know about Australian politics, but we only have two parties, and they're both essentially financed by enormous corporations. So it's a ruse. The whole thing's a ruse. And you have different social issues on each side that come up, and then it becomes this: you're with us or against us, right versus left. But it's
going nowhere good.
Nowhere good.
No, we're good. Now, Cenk, we have data to back this up, and we'll get to that. But first, your 2 cents.
I mean, this is the essence of my book, Justice is Coming. Yes, it's all a ruse, it's all theater. And mainly, Sharon, I'm so excited that others have begun to figure out, yeah, they're just getting you to fight so that they can rob the place blind. So let's tell them about the great American robber.
Let's do that. Rogan is right. Special interest groups fund both parties. Take crypto, for example. After the 2024 election, CNN reported this. The cryptocurrency industry's leading super PACs plowed $131 million into congressional races this election cycle to help elect dozens of pro-crypto lawmakers, while individual billionaires with crypto interests, they spent millions to help return Donald Trump to the White House. Crypto super PACs spend heavily on Republicans as well as key Democrats. How about the banking and real estate industry? According to Open Secrets, they've donated nearly the exact same amount to congressional Republicans and Democrats since 1990, topping $4.5 billion total. I mean, just look at it, it's even split just about. Money to Congress from the financial insurance real estate industry. That is what the graph shows. The defense industry also poured money into candidates on both sides of the aisle, with contributions exceeding $300 million. So the corruption is definitely bipartisan, and the American people know this. 84% of respondents in a Pew Research poll agreed special interest groups and lobbyists have too much to say in what happens in politics. And that is true for both Republicans and Democrats. So yeah, this is no surprise to you, Cenk, and you've been talking about this for, gosh, I don't know how many, I don't want to age you, but probably decades at this point. But this has been going on for so long. Why now? Why now are people waking up? Will it matter? Will it make a difference?
Yeah, so I think it will eventually make a difference. I think the revolution has begun. We literally do a show called The Revolution now at 8 o'clock Eastern, right after the Young Turks. That's 6 to 8 every day. And I now see it not just on the left, but also on the right and the middle, right? So Rogan backed Trump this time around. Before he backed Bernie, I think it's fair to say that Rogan's independent. I think it's also fair to say that he maybe these days leans a little right, maybe a lot right in some of the instances. And we certainly disagree with him on some of the culture war issues, et cetera. But it's super refreshing and it's wonderful to hear that he gets it. The whole thing's a play, guys. And by the way, the people who put on the play is chapter 5 of my book. That's mainstream media. I called it The Matrix. And so now it's funny because some others on the right also call it The Matrix, because it's The Matrix. Because corporate media tells you, and it's the most important arm of corporate rule. It's the #1 shield and weapon that they have. They'll tell you, no, money in politics is not that big a deal. That's why they almost never talk about it. So when legislation is being discussed, there's money being poured in by the hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, later in today's show, we're gonna have a discussion about the big pharma, which is one of the biggest lobbying groups in the whole country that represent the drug companies, of course. They've spent $3.6 billion lobbying over the last 3 decades. You think they spent $3.6 billion for their health? No, they're buying up all of our politicians. That's why we have these preposterous laws that say we're not allowed to negotiate drug prices, that a company can set the price and that's it, you gotta pay it. You don't have a choice. That's not capitalism, that's not the free market. No, this is corporatism. Corporations have completely taken over and they have this faux battle between the Democrats and the Republicans, usually about cultural war issues. That's how they divide you and get you to fight the people on your left or the people on your right, when of course, you know what I'm gonna say. You should be looking up, look up. The rando on your left doesn't have any, even if the right wing is right about Antifa, like, oh my God, there's a dude in Portland and he protests too hard and he did something, he did graffiti, oh, Antifa. You think that brother had enough power to rig the whole system? Or a guy on the right, oh, that guy's racist and he's terrible. The brother's living in a rental in the middle of Nebraska. He doesn't have any power. The guy who came in across the border a minute ago barely has $1 in his pocket. He doesn't have any power. The guys with the power, the guys with the money up top, the donors. So Sharon, I think that the Great Awakening began with Epstein and Israel, right? When Trump came in after saying, oh, we're gonna release the Epstein files, we're gonna release the Epstein files. And he came in and was like, I'm just kidding. I'm a liar, just like everyone else. I'm protecting the elites, just like everyone else. I'm the establishment, just like everyone else. I'm gonna screw you and no lube on Epstein, period. I'm never gonna give it what you want. I was lying all the way and I'm gonna protect the guilty, okay? So then he goes, and then on Israel, I'm gonna give them whatever they want. Okay, Mary Madison was so good to me. They give me a lot of money. So now I take your money and I give it to Israel. And slowly the right wing started to wake up, right? And we're gonna talk about this more in the show later with Rogan versus Shapiro. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, guys. So that's a foreign government that's influencing our politics. And other foreign governments try to. Israel's by far the best at it. But Big Pharma is 10 times the size of the Israeli lobby. So that's why they have these enormous monopolies. They used to have patents that lasted 5 years, now they last 12 years for a lot of these drugs. We're not allowed to negotiate prices. They have complete control over the market. They make us pay at least 4 times as much as other developed nations. Why are we paying 4 times what Canada is, or in a lot of cases 8 times, 100 times what Canada, Germany, and France are paying? So it's a robbery. It's nothing but a robbery. And all of this is super obvious. Here, I'll give you more facts because I can't stop. I mean, this is the #1 issue in the country by a landslide, right? Which is that we don't control our own government. We need to get American sovereignty back. Not just in the case of foreign policy, but also super importantly in domestic policy and helping the average American. So Represent Us did a study a couple of years back. They looked at a 5-year period. The top 200 corporations gave $5.8 billion in lobbying, campaign contributions, et cetera. That's a lot of money, $5.8 billion, right? You know how much those same companies got back in that same time period? $4.4 trillion. So it's a great return on investment. They give the politicians $1, then the politicians give them $1,000 back because it's not the politicians' money, it's our money. And they're literally robbing us blind to give to their donors. I can go on and on. Princeton and Northwestern did a study. They studied 20 years, over 2,000 bills. You know what percentage affect the bottom 90%? That's almost all of us. 90% of the country has on public policy, bills that pass, 0%. We have no effect at all. That's not a democracy. And in the midst of all this, Sharon, mainstream media is like, I don't see it. What?
Status quo.
What money in politics? Are you saying Israel has undue influence? You're an anti-Semite. Are you Big Pharma having too much influence? No, they're just trying to innovate. Oh, you guys sound conspiratorial. You think the politicians just work for their donors? Oh, that's a very naughty thing to say about the beloved politicians. Come on, man, if you did real news, you would do like us. All you do is talk about the donors because they're 100% in charge of our government.
So if they're 100% in charge, and I mean, now you got me really hyped up. I was having a relatively good Friday. Nothing's going to change. If they are the league owners. They make the rules. They have all the money. They have the police, the courts. They have everything that we don't. That 90% you were talking about. It's never going to change. We have little spurts, this little beautiful spurt in New York with Mamdani, right? But we all know what's going to happen to him. And I hate to be this glass half empty type of person. I'm generally like, I'll never give up. I will never give up. That's generally my attitude. But when you put it like that, we already don't have a democracy. And how the hell do we fight to get it back?
So good news, I have the answer. But first, a couple of things that you mentioned there. Look, Mamdani is the least affected. Why? Because he's an executive there. He's the mayor of the city, right? So he doesn't have to deal with Congress. Congress is nearly 100% corrupt. So now he's gonna have to deal with local politicians, and they also get campaign contributions, but it's a little bit easier to deal with. And since he's the executive, he has a little bit more power than an average guy would in a legislature, right? So he's got a halfway shot at doing something interesting. Now, on the other hand, if you're a legislator, so for example, progressives under Biden, they said, okay, well, we're gonna try to get $15 minimum wage, and we're gonna try to get a little bit of the Green New Deal in, and we had a laundry list of things that we wanted. Almost none of them made it in. And I kept saying to every progressive that went in, for God's sake, you got to start with money in politics. Because if you don't start with money in politics and you don't fix that, you're not going to be able to win on any other issue. And no one listened, okay? And part of the reason they don't listen is because, number one, when they get into Congress, they get giant heads. And so they're like, oh, I am a congressperson. I don't listen to anyone anymore, okay? So that's point one. Point two, more importantly, is if they talk about money in politics, they have to talk about how their colleagues are corrupt. Because look, that bar graph we just showed you about the party contributions between 1998 and 2024, that shows you everything you need to know. Because when the Democrats tell you, oh, it's those terrible Republicans that are getting paid off by the donors and they work for the Koch brothers and they're terrible, right? They're getting the same exact amount of money and usually from the same exact donors. Same thing for the Republicans. Oh, we're the populists, we're gonna look out for the average guy. So why does nothing ever change no matter who's the president? You like Biden, you like Trump, and nothing changes because they've given an equal amount to both parties and they have them under complete lockdown. So that's why those corporate politicians, and what's a corporate politician? People who take corporate PAC money, and that's about 98% of Congress. So they own 98% of Congress. That's why nothing ever good happens for us, because they're not our representatives. So I know what you're thinking, Cenk, for God's sake, where's the good news? Okay, so,
yeah.
Okay, so I read your mind. There's two things that we can do. All right, number one, you can change a party completely from the top. So all we have to do is win the Democratic primary in 2028. Our candidate, a clean, honest, smart, strong candidate. I know finding one is tough, but it's a country of 330 million people. We don't have to just pick politicians. We pick the right guy and he can change the whole party overnight. See, that's when the media will go, oh, that's so naive, you can't do that. Really? Because I saw Trump do it. I saw Trump do it with my own eyes. We all saw it. So they're lying to you. Yes, one guy can change the entire party. So if a populist candidate wins the 2028 primary, he goes, that's it. We're not taking corporate PAC money in the primaries anymore. The most honest candidate, the one that's gonna serve the voters, is the person who's most likely to win in a primary where there's no corporate PAC money. Then that person will be a fighter. That person is more likely to help you with policies. Now, is that enough? No, but then that person not only can clean up their own party, not only can pass some bills around the edges on money in politics, but to me, the most important thing is they could use the bully pulpit to push for the one thing that will solve all this and will get our democracy back. And it's not an exaggeration, guys, because the thing that I'm gonna suggest is super powerful. It's also very difficult. It's an amendment. Constitutional amendments go above the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is who legalized bribery in decisions of 76, 78, and then of course in Citizens United. And again, this is the whole thesis of my book, Justice is Coming. check it out, and you get the whole full story. And you see almost a CSI, a crime scene of how they stole our democracy from us. It was a plan. They executed the plan and it worked brilliantly. Now we've got to reverse that plan. The way that we reverse it is by going above the Supreme Court and getting an amendment. But now you say, well, wait a minute, Cenk, amendments are so hard. You got to get 2/3 of either Congress or the states to agree and 3/4 of the states to ratify. 3/4 of the states, how are you going to get anybody to agree to that when we're such a split country? Well, Sharon, there's one thing we are not split on. Over 90% of Americans hate money in politics. So you ask a Republican voter or a Democratic voter, are you in favor of that corruption where our politicians take donor money, or do you want to end that corruption? And the answer is overwhelming. We want that amendment. And we can't get it without a big enough spotlight, because corporate media hates amendments, hates change, loves the status quo. So how do you get past the corporate media? With a guy with a giant bully pulpit. The president must be covered. They can't be like, oh, the president wants a constitutional amendment, but we're not going to talk about it, right? And once you start that process and you shine that spotlight, people are going to love that amendment, and there's going to be a giant push for it. They will play the tape of me saying this now, although they should go back to 2011 when I started Wolfpack, and get all of these tapes of me saying this, because it's gonna happen. But we gotta pick the right guy in the primary in 2028.
Okay, I think everything, it sounds like it could actually work. It actually, what you said, you actually convinced me. At first I was kind of rolling my eyes and I was getting a little restless. But then when you brought it home, yeah, sure, we can all get behind that. But then I remember that they keep starting these pockets of culture wars, and it works and it distracts people, and maybe they get off of this amendment thing. So I'm almost there. There, Cenk. But I just think, go.
But Sharon, one last quick thing. So I hear you, and passing an amendment is difficult, enormously difficult under any circumstance, right? And Wolfpack started now 14 years ago, and we got to pass it only 5 states, and then they started rolling them back, et cetera. Pelosi and McConnell put a hurting on Wolfpack, to be honest. They're the corporate leaders of their parties throughout those years, and they're like, no, we love money in politics. So they stopped that movement in a lot of ways. That's why we need someone at the very top that you can't stop, because the president's microphone is too large to stop. He can push through anything as long as it's popular enough, and money in politics is definitely popular enough. So the last piece of hope to address your concern, Sharon, is the culture wars have been ripping us to shreds for decades now, right? But now, not only have some on the left, like us, realized, oh wait, the whole point is to divide us. Don't feed into it, don't feed the trolls, right? But now even some on the right have begun to recognize it. So are there still plenty of people saying, I hate Muslims, I hate this, I hate that, Jews, trans, whatever, right? Sure, of course that still exists. But there is now an awakening where a faction of the right are going, oh, the culture wars, that's how they're screwing us. I'm now seeing more and more, tons of independents and more right-wingers online going, oh, get off the culture wars. I got it, it's a bag of squirrels. It's meant to distract us. Look at the actual robbery. That's the distraction, look at the robbery. So if we can get everybody to look at the robbery at the same time, that's our only chance of stopping it.
Well, I do think it has momentum, right? If we got behind this amendment, everyone would get excited. If you think that people taking to the streets, no kings is one thing. I think we could actually stay on message with that. Let's take a quick break, quick social break, and we'll get right back with you.
This is a robbery!
All right, guys, let's go to our members at, actually, first let's go to Super Chat. Matt Silver said, funny how the executive order president hasn't executive ordered SNAP benefits yet. That's such a good point. I could do an executive order about anything. Okay, well then why don't you give us SNAP back? I don't want to. now I'm reading these blind. Ian Hamilton says, hi, Jake. I tweeted you an article, The Guardian, about Putin purging his allies now. Will you talk about it? We all want the SOB to go down. All right, I'll check it out. That would be exciting. I thought that it might happen in the beginning of the war when Russian economy was getting rocked and those oligarchs were getting rocked, but you never know. Putin is one of the worst guys in the world. Starting an offensive war, trying to take land from Ukraine, etc. DJ Payne says, I'd go with Roe. Good. Boomer Dragon Cat says, well done, Jenk and Michael. Smooth sailing. Thank you, Cat. Appreciate it. Referring to the first hour, of course. CDN Norse Dog Dad replies to Frank Thorne. Frank said in YouTube member section about Trump, let him eat cake. And then CDN says, Trump needs to ask the French Prime Minister what happened last time someone said that. Yeah, it didn't end well. On Twitch, Jules to You said, we have money for Israel, we have money for ICE, we have money to build Versailles. People can only take so much until they pull out the pitchforks. Yeah, his own base is pulling out the pitchforks. Look, I don't want to keep saying I told you, and it's not about me, but guys, when I see something, I'm not making it up. And you know me, when you try to push me for a prediction and I don't have enough information, I say, I don't know. You need information for a prediction. But anyways, we'll show you one of them in the next break. Centex 1965 says, I'm in a tight spot right now myself, but I feel so bad for these people suffering. So, well, that's why you're so open-hearted and a beautiful person and why you're here. AJ Nestor says, Snap is basically a Band-Aid for our government's failures to begin with. That is a great point, 100%, right? We should actually have real wages and we should have a government that looks out for us, but we don't. Now at TYT.com, Wind Spirit Feathers says, Nina Turner, she could be that person. I think Nina could too. So of course the problem always is corporate media. They're not gonna let Nina Turner, there's, oh, she lost her congressional race, oh, you can't be her. Bloated Ego says, isn't there a hacker out there that could get the Epstein files? I know, right? Like, come on guys, what are we doing here? Like, all the hackers in the world and you can't get that stuff? Anyway, I'm not encouraging anyone to break the law. Everybody has their own agency. I got nothing to do with it, okay? Don Data Dragon says, the political parties want you to stop talking to your neighbors so they can tell you what your neighbors are thinking. Well, how about this? I'll stop talking to my neighbors when politicians stop talking to their Israeli handlers. Sound fair? Okay. There you go. That means he's going to talk to his neighbors forever and ever and ever, because they all do have handlers and they're obsessed with them. Helen 007 says the reaction to the Dem establishment to Mamdani's win shows they are still determined to be losers. I think that's a fair point. And CB1 says Dem leadership is up for grabs and no one seems to really be fighting for it. I think Roe and Gavin are. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Sharon with you guys. More news, let's do it, Sharon.
Let's do it. How about a little Tucker versus Shapiro?
We have a sitting member of Congress from Florida called Randy Fine, who was literally texted or put on Twitter, we should kill them all, every single one. Someone texted a picture of literally a dead baby and he laughs at it. And it's like, this guy's a lawmaker who's appropriating money to a military committing genocide, and that's cool. That is much worse than anything Nick Fuentes has said.
All right, so that's yesterday. Tucker Carlson there pointed out that while he's been targeted for interviewing Nick Fuentes, Congressman Randy Fine has received really no widespread backlash for repeatedly wishing starvation and death on the people of Gaza. Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, I think what he said there is inarguable. Fuentes has said awful things, and we'll get into it in a second. But Randy Fine has said things that are worse. We should murder 2 million people, and he has the power to execute that. He has the power to take our money to do it, and so I don't think it gets worse than Randy Fine. So I agree with Tucker on that. But then the question is, Ben Shapiro is going to come on and make case against Tucker Carlson. So we're gonna hash it out. Who's right, who's wrong on different issues that they discuss. So let's do that now.
All right, so let's do that. Later in his interview with Megyn Kelly, you saw her there, Carlson explained why he thinks Israel is such an important topic.
Trump is elected. I campaigned for him and I love Trump, I just want to say that. But the second he gets elected, who's the first person to visit? Bibi. Then he comes again, then he comes again. And it's like the energy of the administration and of the entire US government is all of a sudden about Iran. I'm not actually mad at Israel. I'm mad at our leaders for spending their time and my money focusing on someone else's country.
Yeah, so Carlson is not just being attacked for interviewing Nick Fuentes. He's also getting renewed backlash for the other controversial figures that he's interviewed in the past, such as Vladimir Putin and the president of Iran. Here's Carlson explaining why he speaks with those figures.
That was the first thing I wanted to achieve with Nick Fuentes. Like, what is this? Tell me. You know, I'll give you 2 hours. I have only watched your clips for like a minute long. I want to hear, like, why don't you describe what you think? Because I think that's the small role that I play, which is to get documentary evidence of people describing what they think. I did it with Putin. I'll probably do it with every other bad person in the world because I'm interested. Not because I agree with them, because I think it's interesting.
Okay, but the problem here, Cenk, is, and it almost sounds reasonable, and much of it perhaps is when Carlson speaks like this, but I remember when he was over with Putin, he was in a grocery store, and there was a lot of foolish things going on, and it seemed like he was on a propaganda campaign, not just sitting down with the dictator. What say you?
Yeah, he almost seemed to acknowledge in a different part of that conversation that, yeah, he might have been a little too soft on Putin and Fuentes, and he's like, okay, then you do the interview. Right? So, okay, yeah, I hear that. On the other hand, I think you're also right. So, look, this whole platforming thing is bedeviling because on the one hand, the idea of like, yeah, well, why can't we talk to anyone is compelling. So he mentioned about Jeffrey Dahmer, right? And Jeffrey Dahmer's worse than Fuentes. He literally ate people, and Diane Sawyer platformed him by interviewing him. And you remember Mike Wallace interviewed Fidel Castro and the Ayatollah. So a journalist had interviewed Osama bin Laden. So are we not supposed to do that? Are we just supposed to do the sound of silence because we say, okay, that guy is too bad a person, right? Now, on the other hand, okay, so he comes on. Would I have been tougher on Fuentes? I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, go back and, well, you can't watch my old David Duke interview because YouTube and other platforms have taken it off. They've deplatformed it. But if you could watch it, you'd see me debunking his anti-Semitism and debunking his racism and all of that. And yeah, so would I have gone harder against Fuentes? I would like to think that I would, right? And I think there's a lot to go after him on. On the other hand, people are just lying about Tucker Carlson's views on anti-Semitism. He said it during the Fuentes conversation, and he said it again multiple times during the Megyn Kelly conversation. He says, my Christian belief is that everyone is an individual, and that associating any one thing with a whole group, a race, a religion, etc., is wrong. And it was actually really refreshing to hear Tucker Carlson say that. And he said, even my own group does not have some magical quality where we are all right? You have to judge people based on the individual. That's why anti-Semitism is irrational, and I would never do it. Now, have you guys heard people saying, well, yes, but Tucker Carlson has, vehemently come out against anti-Semitism time and time and time again? No, if you watch mainstream media, you would think that he agreed with Fuentes. Oh yeah, the real problem is the Jews. He didn't say that, he said the opposite. So that's why it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, do you believe Tucker Carlson's global history? And I know you said he's pointed out time and time again that he doesn't believe some of these anti-Semitic views that have been espoused. But do you believe his total package doesn't have a foot in that, doesn't have a foot in racism? And I'm really just asking because, I have people over here who say this, people over there who say this, and sometimes I sway back and forth when I hear Tucker say things like, basically, we're all equal. sounding Martin Luther King-ish, I then am on this side. But I think of other things in the past.
Yeah, no, it's fair, guys, because we've seen Tucker do it over a long period of time, right? And so we've seen the dog whistles and we've seen the innuendo, et cetera, and we've pointed out here on the Young Turks. At the same time, has Tucker changed a little bit? Well, there's some argument that he has, and so, for example, he says he's wrong about the Iraq War. Well, that's a huge change. And now he's becoming a lot more populist. Why? He's untethered from Fox News. And if it was just Tucker, you might think maybe it's a trick, but wait a minute, it's a phenomenon that's happening to a lot of the right-wing hosts and to a lot of the independent hosts. And they're now beginning to wake up more and more and saying, wait, why are we just kissing Israel's ass? And they're totally right about that. Why aren't we releasing the Epstein files? They're totally right about that. And now they've even moved on to, wait a minute, I wonder if it's the corporate donors that are causing all these problems. Joe Rogan said it was the last story we did. Steve Bannon has started to talk about corporatism. I mean, I did like a 4-hour conversation with Lex Friedman about corporatism. You should go check that out. And now a year later, or more actually, a year and a half later, to see right-wing independents, et cetera, beginning to realize we're living under corporate rule. I don't think all of that is fake, right? So then the question is how genuine is Tucker in this regard? Well, look, when Fuentes says it's the Jews that are doing it, and white people should rule and Christians should rule, well, he's very clear, and I'm against that, right? So when Tucker says, I don't agree with that, and I think you should judge people based on them as individuals and say that no group, white people or black people, Christians or Jews or Muslims, is superior. Like, Sharon, what am I supposed to do with that? Say reject it? Well, that's what we believe. And remember, even if it's a so-called trick, he's telling millions of people that watch him and listening to him that message, that we're all individuals. And that's a message we agree with. So yes, he probably should have been tougher on Fuentes. Other than that, what are we doing here? Is this, I mean, it's not just we're not having a conversation of, do I agree with Tucker Carlson entirely? Would I vote for Tucker Carlson? Am I a fan of Tucker? We're not having that conversation. Tucker and I disagree on a million things. We're having the conversation of, should Tucker Carlson be canceled and no one should ever talk to him again, and Megyn Kelly was wrong to talk to him, and he should be persona non grata because he's so venomous that, oh, by the way, that's apparently a trope, but you can say it about Christians. You can't say it about anyone who loves Israel, but you can say it about Muslims, Christians, et cetera. So is Tucker venomous enough when he's saying the right things that we should cancel him? And I say no to that. No, he definitely should not be canceled. So that I'm clear on.
All right, I think I am now too on that. Let's reset with this.
And it's very difficult for me to believe that Tucker is merely anti-Israel when, for example, today in his newsletter, I mean, I can directly quote it if you'd like. In his newsletter today, he claimed that Zoran Mamdani is not anti-Semitic. This was his newsletter today, this morning. I mean, I'm happy to read the text. It's a little extraordinary because, again, it is kind of shocking stuff.
So yesterday, Ben Shapiro stated that it was shocking that Tucker Carlson does not think New York City Mayor Mamdani is anti-Semitic. Shapiro and Carlson have feuded for years, but after Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes, their bickering has turned into an all-out war. I mean, this is getting bloody. Shapiro even spoke to CNN's Jake Tapper about Tucker Carlson. Here's that clip.
Doing the right thing by pointing out the obvious, which is that if somebody glosses Nazis on the air, that person probably should not be associated with a conservative think tank, and that everyone should have a duty to say that that is a bad thing to do. So I'm grateful to Kevin for doing that. I think it's a very good thing that he did that. The real issue here is I think that Tucker Carlson's morphing from, I would say, a very edgy right-wing political figure on Fox News, but certainly within the mainstream, into a conspiracist, a person who ideologically launders anti-Semitism, who ideologically launders all sorts of anti-Americanism on his show, and then airs it for the public to hear. The sort of mainstreaming, the popularization and normalization of Fuentes by Carlson is significantly more important than just Fuentes' existence, obviously.
Okay, now later in the clip, we want to warn you, this is why you go out and you watch stuff for yourself and don't have people interpret it for you. Because Tapper completely misrepresented the actual substance of Carlson's interview. Look at this.
Your problem isn't so much that Tucker Carlson had Fuentes on his show, but that he didn't push back at all on the neo-Nazi, anti-Semitic, pro-Joseph Stalin rhetoric, et cetera.
And so it's that part. Tucker Carlson did push back on Fuentes' anti-Semitic remarks. We've shown you those clips several times now. As for Ben Shapiro, take a look at this post from 2015. Let's see what he thought about a different right-winger who made anti-Semitic remarks. Ann Coulter tweets, Jews awful nonsensical. Ann Coulter is also super pro-Israel and has always been, so I won't lose sleep. The double standard, or maybe, I don't know, this is like a couple of different factions going on, is rich. How do we reconcile this, Cenk?
Yeah, okay, so let's first start with Ben Shapiro saying, can you believe Tucker Carlson said that Mamdani is not an anti-Semite? When I've already called him an anti-Semite and everyone else in the Israeli lobby has called him an anti-Semite. Has Mamdani ever said anything that's anti-Semitic? No, you have him on record. They wanted him to apologize for things he didn't say because they couldn't find anything he said that was actually anti-Semitic. You know why? Because Mamdani's not an anti-Semite. And by the way, backed by tons of rabbis and Jewish religious leaders and Jewish voters, right? But he says it like, well, since the Israeli lobby has already declared him an anti-Semite, can you believe that Tucker Carlson is defying the Israeli lobby? Well, I mean, how many stars do you want me to give him? How much credit do you want me to give him? So yeah, Tucker's totally right, and Ben Shapiro's an enormous liar that's trying to smear a Muslim guy because he hates Muslims, and most importantly, because Mamdani will not bow his head to Ben Shapiro's beloved real country, which is Israel, and everybody knows that, Ben. You think you're gonna trick us? Okay, so, and that's why we had that old tweet there, because boy is that telling, where he says, no, Ann Coulter is an anti-Semite, but I don't care, because she's pro-Israel. I mean, that is perfect. That's telling on yourself. And that's exactly what we've been saying, guys. We're actually the guys fighting against actual anti-Semitism. We want to protect Jewish Americans, and these guys are like, who cares? Who cares? Jewish Americans are to hide behind for beloved Israel. You can be anti-Semitic all you want. By the way, you're saying, oh, well, Cenk, that's kind of an exaggeration, right? Is it? Wait, hold on. That same Nick Fuentes, anyone who talks to Nick Fuentes must be canceled. Ben Shapiro just said it. You heard him say it. Donald Trump talked to Nick Fuentes. In fact, he had dinner with him. In fact, he had dinner with him with the other guy in the country known as the second biggest or the first biggest anti-Semite, Kanye West. He had dinner with the two biggest anti-Semites in the country, and no criticism, no cancellation. Why? Because Trump is pro-Israel. This isn't about protecting Jewish Americans, this is about protecting Israel. So thank you for the confession, we appreciate it, okay? Now, to go to defying not just Ben Shapiro, but proving Jake Tapper wrong, and it is, I mean, to say it's shoddy journalism is doing Jake a favor, right? It's no journalism. Did you watch the interview? He said that Tucker Carlson did not push back on Nick Fuentes at all. You saw it with your own eyes. Now, let's see if he did. Let's go to the E7 here.
My Christian faith tells me that there's no such thing as blood guilt, and virtue or sin is not inherited. It's not a feature of DNA. So every person must be assessed individually as God assesses each person individually. And that's like a foundational view. So I always thought it's great to criticize and it's question like our relationship with Israel because it's insane and it hurts us. We get nothing out of it. I completely agree with you there. But the second you're like, well, actually it's the Jews. First of all, it's against my Christian faith. Like, I just don't believe that and I never will, period. And second, then it becomes a way to discredit. That's when I was like, this guy's a Fed. What I do think is bad, just objectively bad and destructive is the all Jews are guilty or all anybody is guilty of anything. Because that's just like not true. And we don't believe that as Christians.
So who's the liar? Is it Tucker Carlson or is it Jake Tapper? Because we just saw it on tape. Tucker Carlson pushed back by saying it is a foundational view of his that you cannot judge people based on their religion. That is why anti-Semitism is wrong. He said that it goes against the core principles of his Christian faith. But Jake Tapper lied to his entire audience and said, no, Tucker Carlson did not push back and agreed with the anti-Semitism. That is a flat out lie. Why? Jake Tapper loves Israel, Ben Shapiro loves Israel, and then Ben Shapiro has the audacity to say that Tucker Carlson was anti-American. Brother, we're on to you, we're on to you. Look, you have this whole thing where corporate media goes around kissing Israel's ass. Oh, don't worry about it, I'm not gonna call it a genocide. No cable news anchor has called it a genocide. Not even on MSNBC. No, shh. No one has said, hey, what the hell did we give this government $30 billion for in the middle of a genocide? Imagine if in the middle of the Rwandan genocide, we're like, oh, nice job, way to hack those people to death. Here's $30 billion. But no, it's Israel, you can't say that. No, remember, the Muslims are the terrorists. The Muslims are the bad guys, says Jake Tapper and Ben Shapiro and every Israeli supporter in corporate media and in politics. They smear all Muslims and then they turn around and have the audacity to go, oh, you've been anti-Semitic. No, brother, you're the one that is saying, no, don't talk about how AIPAC and the Israeli lobby give money to 90% of Congress. So Jake, let me ask you something. Did the Israeli lobby give money to 90% of Congress? And does that 90% vote with Israel 100% of the time? You can't say it. If you say facts, you're an anti-Semite. No, this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. This has everything to do with protecting their beloved Israel. Now look, Jake's a more complicated character than Ben Shapiro. Shapiro is pure Israel first, doesn't care about America. In fact, there's a clip of him saying like, well, Israel's the most, Israel exists and Israel's great and so if anything goes wrong in America, I'll go to Israel anyway, right? All right, brother. You're anti-American, you don't believe in America. You just want to come here to take as much of our money and funnel it over to the country you actually love, which is Israel. And by the way, this isn't about just, is about Jews? No, look, every new immigrant community, and the Jewish community is a little bit different, it's a little bit more complicated because they've been here longer, but usually every immigrant community comes in and has some feeling of affection for their homeland. And so if the Polish or the Turkish or the Armenian community or any community would they redirect some of our money in terms of aid to their country of origin? If they could, they might, right? And that doesn't make them evil or bad or anything like that. But on the other hand, we shouldn't allow it, right? If Turks had this tremendous power and we said, no, you have to give money to you owe Turkey. You owe Turkey. And if you say anything against that, you're anti-Turkish. Your life should be ruined. You should be canceled. You should be this, you should be that. Again, Jake Tapper is more subtle. He doesn't say what I said earlier in a hyperbolic way where he says, I hate all Muslims and you should hate all Muslims. But instead, he's minimizes a grotesque genocide where 70,000 people were murdered, including 20,000 kids, and he doesn't ever allow anyone to question whether we should keep sending money to Israel, because in his mind, no, we owe Israel. You're all anti-Semites. You better not question that. And I'm sick of it. We're all sick of it. Good news, Sharon. It's not just us. Now the right wing, everybody's getting caught online. So Israel got caught, and nobody's buying their crap anymore. Everybody knows Ben Shapiro's working for Israel. Everybody knows all these guys, Mark Levin, he doesn't care about America. He only cares about Israel, everybody knows that. And so now you can, Tucker is against America. And since he is not kissing Israel's ass, he's an anti-Semite, even though he says the exact opposite. Smear him, let's all smear him. And hey, Jake, is there any like pro-Palestinian voices on your show? Is there? And by the way, at this point, I'm supposed to denounce Tucker Carlson when the brother is saying it's a genocide. and we should not fund a genocide, and you want me to cancel him? Hell no is my answer. Hell no. I'd 10,000 times rather cancel Ben Shapiro, but I don't have to cancel Ben Shapiro. I don't have to cancel anyone. I'm not these guys, these goons, these thugs like Jake Tapper and Shapiro. Cancel anyone opposed to Israel. I mean, anti-Semite. Yeah, sure. My ass, it's about anti-Semitism. It's not about that at all. It's about their beloved foreign government. And now everyone knows. So you go ahead and try to bottle it up, but it ain't gonna work. We're sick of funding Israel. They should get $0, not another dollar. They're not even an ally. All they've ever done is gotten us into more and more trouble, and I can't stand it. And neither can the right wing, neither can the middle wing, neither can the left wing. The only people still left defending the grotesqueries of that Israeli government are mainstream media, bought off and loyalists to Israel in media and online and elsewhere in social media. Now, guys, these are facts. They'll say, all these facts are tropes, or all these facts are anti-Semitic. Is Israel paying $7,000 to people making videos, propaganda, Hasbara, here in America? Yes, they definitely are. How many times has Jake Tapper said that? Zero, because this is beloved Israel. Beloved Israel. Jake, why don't you admit it? Or have one person on your show that will effectively push back. It's so ironic, because they're like, Tucker won't push back against Nick Fuentes. And then Jake Tapper has Ben Shapiro on. Ben Shapiro lies about what Tucker Carlson says. Ben Shapiro lies about everything, and it gives just nonstop Israeli propaganda. And Jake Tapper not only doesn't push back, but he says, oh yeah, Ben is right. Oh, Tucker's an anti-Semite. You're all anti-Semites if you oppose Israel. No pushback at all. So you guys can play your BS games, but the rest of the country now hates you. And no, you isn't Jewish people. We love Jewish Americans. They're our brothers and sisters. They're dentists and accountants and plumbers. They're real people. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the pro-Israel radicals that are in the media and politics. And now there's an ocean around you guys. And we're not gonna stand for it anymore. And we're gonna defund Israel. And all of us agree, America over any other country, and yes, including your beloved Israel.
You all right? Look, I agree with every single bit that you said there. And it's so ironic because we've been programmed so much. As you mentioned, Tucker's untethering from Fox when they kicked him out, when he wasn't useful to them anymore. I found myself like getting a little defensive. But that's exactly, it's one and the same. What the mainstream media is doing here in Tapper, it's exact same thing. And it's something that perhaps more and more people are waking up. Well, people are waking up to it and have been deprogrammed, and more will come and they'll be deprogrammed. But it's gonna be, I hate saying it, but it's gonna be so bloody because the status quo, the money, pledging Israel first, while being an American citizen has been so prevalent for so long. It's gonna be bloody to try to move beyond that. But like you said, there's an ocean around them now. We're gonna take a quick social break, much more to come.
Tucker Carlson, a terrible friend.
All right, so let's go to our members as usual. Care for One Another writes in on TYT.com. Sharon always brings the beauty, intelligence, and coolness to every show. TYT has the best people, and Cenk is the progressive president we never had. Thanks for helping me feel sane in America's insane political media space. Guys, look, you know, the presidency's, I can't believe I ran for president, but only because it was the most desperate of times, and unfortunately we were right about that. But imagine if there was someone that had the same convictions that I do, that was president, that actually cared about you guys. Why is that so unimaginable? And the reason why it's unimaginable is because of corporate media. They're the worst of the worst. If there's someone who's gonna fight for you guys, they'll smear them till the cows come home. They're the biggest smearers on planet Earth. They character assassinate anyone who's for change. I loathe them with every fiber of my body. And they loathe me, so good. As a journalist, you're supposed to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Well, good news. I like to think I did both. I mean, my greatest honor is when people that have family in Gaza say that we provided some comfort for them, and it doesn't get any more afflicted than the people in Gaza, so I could retire off that. And then, do I afflict the comfortable? Well, I do, and they afflict me back. And so, do you think the comfortable are just gonna sit there and take it? No, that's why we get pummeled here. And you only see a small fraction of it. Like off air, there's tons of pressure and tactics and this and that. Why? Because we afflicted them, so they would like to afflict it back to us. And that's why I love you guys, and I keep telling you, you don't know how important and valuable you are. So members keep us alive when almost every other force is against us. So thank you for allowing us to have this voice. Okay, Mr. Agron writes in, hey, looky here, I love TYT since 2008, but I'll get on them when I think they're wrong. No worry, I still love them. Yeah, why is that hard? Right? We're all human beings. We can't all agree on everything, but so thank you, brother, for your attitude. Bloated Ego says, oh, we already read that one. So on Twitch, Dev0094 says he's already been canceled. What more can they do? They can't keep trying to banish or excommunicate him when it hasn't worked. Trying that same old thing would just make him stronger. Well, that's why, look, ironically, I think they're gonna make Tucker Carlson stronger until he's gonna run for president, and he's gonna have an excellent chance because people hate the establishment. So the more the establishment says Tucker's a naughty boy, the more people go, oh, really? I should listen to Tucker Carlson, because they're morons at the establishment.
I'm a double.
All right, Sharon, we don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to do two quick things here. One, I wanted to say at the end of that last story that we covered, if they keep canceling every non-anti-Semitic critic of Israel, all there's going to be left is Fuentes. So they have no idea how counterproductive they're being. So they're like, okay, Cenk, Tucker, whoever else, you guys are speaking out against anti-Semitism, and you're saying it's clearly wrong, right? But we're gonna cancel you anyway because you're criticizing Israel. And the only people that are gonna be left are the guys saying, yeah, it's the Jews, like Nick Fuentes, saying it's the Jews, right? And that's gonna make him stronger and stronger and stronger. But they don't get it, because all they have is cancel culture. So when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they're like, all right, destroy every critic of Israel. But you're trying to bottle up a thing that is dangerous, and it's the wrong strategy. Instead, we need to have an honest conversation about the control that Israel has in this country, but they won't let us have that. No. Smear them, ruin their lives, etc. I loathe them. Anyway, one more thing, guys. You see now all of this giant MAGA civil war. I just show this to you guys one more time because you gotta know who to trust. You gotta know who's right and who's wrong and who sees things and who doesn't, right? So this was before Trump took office. It was in December of last year. I was on David Pakman's show, and this is what I said.
look, this is where I think the rubber hits the road. And this is now I'm really out on a limb, okay?
Okay.
I think his base is gonna turn on Israel. And so when he goes, yeah, no, I'm gonna give Israel another $30 billion and I'm gonna help them bomb more countries. At some point, MAGA's gonna go, no, that's enough, brother, man, that's enough. We said America first, not Israel first. And so I think they're gonna turn on that. And that's the right wing's never turned on Israel. The left wing's never really turned on Israel. No one's allowed to turn on Israel in America. But when you tell the right wing you're not allowed to do something, okay, let's see what happens. So again, we'll see. I get that I'm predicting unprecedented things, but I'm doing that based on what I'm actually seeing on the ground.
So Sharon, was in January of this year, before Trump took office. Seems like I might have gotten that one a little bit right.
Yeah, or a lot right. It's just fascinating to me the times that we're in, and as I was watching that clip, I was thinking about you in my head again about you have to talk to the other side. Otherwise, what are you going to accomplish? And now here we are, November 7th, 2025. Soon to be a 1-year anniversary of that clip, and boy, MAGA could really help. Joining forces here about the one thing people care about, a huge thing people care about, to right the ship, right the wrong, stop the war, stop the killing. Could be a beautiful thing. It could be a unifying thing.
Yeah, no, it's an enormous development in American politics and a wonderful development. And that's part of the reason why mainstream media and all the politicians hate it. And so last thing here, guys. So when I said that, everybody said, you're absolutely crazy. You're out of your mind. MAGA's never gonna do anything good. They're not gonna turn on Israel. They love serving Israel, blah, 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 blah. Everybody thought I was absolutely nuts. And now it's happened, right? Now, a second reason I tell you that is because the next time I tell you something and everybody says it's nuts, maybe remember that one and the time I said Bernie can win in 2013 and the time we formed Justice Democrats and said AOC could win, etc. Why? Not because, oh, give me more credit. Who cares about me? No, because the next thing I'm gonna tell you is we can win the Democratic primary in 2028 with an actual populist, an honest, smart, and strong progressive populist. And that person can make all the difference and can get our democracy back. Please believe me when I tell you that. Because it's true, and if we work together, we can make it happen. Okay, all right, Sharon, you're the best. We appreciate you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, so guys, I'm gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, the revolution, and we're gonna interview a guest that's gonna tell you about an excellent example of over-the-top corruption in our government and why we need to change it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome to the revolution. We are doing some interviews now to give you a sense of why we need a revolution, and that is to get our representative democracy and our government back. So now we're going to bring on Shannon Brownlee. She wrote a great piece in The Lever about the FDA and the corruption that goes on there and the corporate capture that happens. Shannon, wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, you have to pronounce your name for me.
Cenk Uygur.
Cenk, okay.
Yeah, like short for Jenkins, Cenk. So Shannon, let's talk about the FDA and how corporate capture works. So first of all, what's Big Pharma and how much money did they spend on lobbying the government over the last 3 decades?
They spent multiple billions of dollars lobbying the federal government over the last 3 decades. And Big Pharma is really not just companies that make drugs, but also make biotech drugs, which are a little bit different, but we call all of them Big Pharma.
So now the Food and Drug Administration in the past has been really trusted and in a lot of ways a gold standard in the world for approving drugs and making sure that things are safe, right? But it seems like things are changing a little bit, and you wrote about that. Why are they changing? Why are we concerned about what's happening at the FDA?
Well, it's actually been going on for many decades. It's not just with this new administration. It's been a problem for 25 or 30 years that the pharmaceutical industry has effectively not only captured the FDA in various ways, but it's also captured all of the other entities around the FDA that influence the decisions that it makes, including patient groups, including Congress, including physicians, including researchers.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to imply that it's just under this administration, absolutely not. In fact, a lot of their voters, not their politicians, but their voters, the MAHA crowd, Make America Healthy Again, there's a host of issues there. But on the upside of MAHA is they are concerned about these giant corporations that are having an undue influence in our government, and they're right to be concerned, and your article shows that and proves it. So before we get to what this administration is doing, tell us about the law that was passed, I believe in 1992, that wound up doing so much damage.
You bet. Although I have to tell you that the sort of MAHA situation, it makes it very confusing to be a lefty or a conservative because in a lot of ways, MAHA is saying a lot of things that that my colleague Gene Lenzer, who is my co-author on this article, and I have been saying for many, many years. And so it's been very interesting. But 1992 is the important year. This was the passage of the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, known in Washington, D.C. as PDUFA. And it was passed for a number of reasons. One of them being that the FDA just didn't have the money to be able to review drugs in a timely way. So drugs would sit on a reviewer's desk for as long as 2 years before they were able to get to it, because the administration, the Reagan administration, and the Congress were effectively starving the FDA of funding.
So they've got a problem. It's taking too long to approve drugs, fair. They decided they're going to do a bill to expedite it. Well, what did they do wrong in that bill?
So what the bill did is it created this program called user fees, and the pharmaceutical industry effectively, it became pay to play. The pharmaceutical industry paid the FDA and still pays the FDA to review drugs quickly. So one of the things that the FDA had to agree to was that it would get drugs reviewed and a decision made within 1 year. And in fact, after the user fees were put into effect, the agency was able to do it. They were able to do it in 14 months, pretty quickly. And the time that they've taken has gone down and down and down because these user fees paid for more reviewers, and that really sped things up.
Okay, so that's the good news. Okay, now we're approving drugs a little bit quicker, and so it seems like it worked. But now, unfortunately, we go to the law of unintended consequences. So once they're getting user fees from the people and the companies they're supposed to be regulating, now wait a minute, if they say that their drug doesn't work, and that either that company gets aggrieved, or by the way, maybe the company goes under and then they can't pay a fee, right? Because their drug doesn't work, right? So now you've hired 1,000 people using these user fees, but since you have less of them now, you might have to fire 200 of them or 20 of them. So wait a minute, now your job kind of depends on you approving these drugs. Have I summarized it right?
That is exactly the problem, which is that when an agency is dependent on the industry for its funding, it effectively has a vested interest in doing what the agency is going to be happy with. And what the companies would do if their drug wasn't approved is they would go complain to Congress. And as we know, Congress is in the pocket of these industries, of many industries, but no industry is more able to pull shots than the pharmaceutical industry, in large measure because it gives more money to Congress than any other single industry in the United States.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about is Israel's lobbying in the middle of this horrible genocide for these last 2 years. But as I've clarified on the show dozens of times, Big Pharma is much larger than AIPAC.
Way bigger.
Yeah, and so and they're so powerful, they don't allow us to negotiate the prices of their product, which is stunning. It's literally unprecedented, unheard of in any government. It's just, it's bizarre. So now, but Shannon, let me break it down a little bit more. So they do political capture because they spent $3.6 billion lobbying in the last 3 decades, right? And they didn't spend the $3.6 billion for their health or for charity. They did it to do political capture, buy off all the politicians. Now you're talking about regulatory capture, where now all of a sudden their jobs depend on them approving the drugs inside the government. But then there's another problem for the folks that work at the FDA, and that's the revolving door. So tell us what the revolving door is.
So the revolving door is that, and interestingly, it spins both ways. The revolving door means that that people at the FDA, when they leave the FDA, they often go to jobs in the pharmaceutical industry. And while on the one hand, you say, well, that's kind of the stuff that they're really good at is thinking about drugs and what drugs work and what drugs don't work and how you get drugs across the finish line at the FDA. But what it does is it creates a situation where when you're in your job at the FDA, you're making your decisions about whether or not this drug should be approved or not. You may be thinking, well, in a year or two, I'm going to be going out there looking for a new job because I'm not making as much money when I work for government. This is particularly a problem for the higher ups, for managers who often go to pharmaceutical jobs. But the way the revolving door spins the other direction is that people from industry cycle into the FDA, they implement industry-friendly policies while they're there, and then they cycle right back out again and they go take their jobs again at the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, so now this also happens in other industries, most notably defense contractors. So generals give billions of dollars to defense contractors when they're in the Pentagon, then they retire, and voila, they get jobs that are worth millions of dollars from those same defense contractors. So in fact, I actually asked Elon Musk when he was doing Doge, hey, can you pass a law that says that they will not be able to work for defense contractors? Both him and Donald Trump Jr. said, yes, we're working on that. What's funny is that a year later, it turns out they weren't working on it.
I know, I'll believe it when I see it, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, same thing in the case of healthcare. As you pointed out earlier, a lot of Maha is actually on the right side on this issue. They're against this kind of corruption. They might call it the swamp, right? And so has RFK Jr. or Donald Trump helped in this regard or hurt?
I don't know. It's sort of like on the one hand, on the other hand. So to start with, the commissioner that was appointed, Marty McCarry, is a physician. He's a surgeon. He actually, I've co-authored with him on a paper in a medical journal. He actually was going to be a co-author on one of the stories in this series because he was really committed to the use of good science in approving drugs. But I think he's stymied by an administration that's very deregulatory and that is very susceptible to the kinds of lobbying that Congress is susceptible to, which is that when a company doesn't like what the FDA has done, it goes to Congress, and now it also goes to the White House. And we just saw this in the case of the approval of a drug that is for a rare condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And a bunch of congressmen went to the White House when the current one of the current people at the FDA said he was going to halt sales. Some people, including the company, went to the White House, and next thing you know, this guy gets fired. So it's on the one hand, there are people who have good intentions in the FDA. On the other hand, they are really being stymied by an administration that's not really that interested in going up against the pharmaceutical industry. At least that's our take on it.
Yeah, but backed up by facts, right? And I remember,
yes.
I remember when RFK Jr. came in. And by the way, when he was an independent candidate, we interviewed him here. We're open-minded, and I liked his housing price policy. I liked his anti-corruption policy, and some of his healthcare policies. And others, obviously, I massively disagree with, and that's normal. That's okay. But so he said he was going to take these guys on. You know, Shannon, as far as I've seen, he hasn't. He went from taking on the pharmaceutical companies and the big food and all those things that he said he was going to campaign against. And now we're doing weirdo stuff on autism and vaccines and like distractions and culture war stuff. And it doesn't look like he's addressed any of the corporate problems.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know whether it's because he can't or because that was just a cover. Because the reality is much of this, so the Maha stuff is one thing, and then a lot of the president's agenda have come out of the Heritage Foundation and their Project 2025 document. And the Heritage Foundation has always been very, very pro-industry. It's very right-wing. It has it's very conservative, and yet a lot of what was in Project 2025 was. I mean, I could have written parts of it, and a lot of what was in the Maha document, I could have written parts of it. But I think it's kind of a bait and switch, that they say things that will appeal to the base, and then they don't really have any intention of actually following through on it. And so people vote for them and think they're doing the right thing when in fact they're really not doing the right thing. The whole thing about autism and vaccines is RFK's pet thing, and there's not a lot of evidence behind a lot of it. And I wish that I wish that he would do something about big food. That's another issue. That's another big contributor to the ill health in the United States. And I wish he would do something about the pharmaceutical industry. But I don't know whether he can't or he doesn't really mean it. It's hard to know.
So now back to the FDA. Approving drugs because there's pressure to approve them, but not necessarily based on the science, could be very dangerous. So tell us about the potential dangers here.
So there's no such thing as free lunch in healthcare, and there's no such thing as a side effect-free medicine. All drugs have side effects. And so in the approval process, what the reviewers are really trying to do is kind of strike a balance between what the harms are, what the potential for harm is, versus the potential for benefit. And if you have a drug that doesn't really offer any benefit, all it can do is harm patients. And that is exactly what's happening right now, is that there are these drugs that are being put on the market that either we don't know yet whether or not they actually are effective, or it's pretty clear that they're not effective. And yet the harms stay exactly the same. And so these drugs are going out there and people are buying them, and they're paying out of pocket, their insurers are paying for them, which means we all pay for it. And they're harming patients.
So you mentioned a couple of Alzheimer's drugs in the beginning of the piece. Tell us a little bit about that particular example.
So we dove pretty deep into the Alzheimer's drugs. The first one that was approved was Aduhelm, and this was a drug that that failed on the first go round at the FDA. The FDA said no because it didn't show any benefit to patients. It's not even, it's really important to understand that these drugs don't actually improve your dementia. What they are supposed to do is actually slow it down, and they are not doing even that. And they have very serious harms. They cause strokes. They cause they cause, they've killed people. These are really, really serious drugs. And if they're not helping anybody, if they're not slowing dementia down, then there's really no point to taking them. So the first one gets approved after it fails, and it gets approved on this preliminary evidence. And it's approved in part because there was one guy at the FDA who decided that he really wanted it to get approved. His name was Billy Dunn. And it was very, very clear that all the meetings that the company had with this guy, all the arm twisting that went on was crucial to how it got approved. So then the other two drugs come. So then there's this big brouhaha in the press, and this drug ultimately gets withdrawn from the market by the company. So then the other two drugs get approved, and they're really no better. They're basically the same kind of drug. They have the same kinds of side effects, and they have the same almost non-existent, if not non-existent, efficacy.
Yeah, huge problem. By the way,
and here's the thing that sort of, is Alzheimer's is a really terrible problem. It's a big problem, and we don't have effective treatments for it. So there's a huge need. My parents all had dementia at some point in their lives. It wasn't that bad, but it was significant. And so we really need treatments, but approving drugs just because we really need treatments is not the same as approving drugs that actually benefit patients.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, you said Billy Dunn there, and it reminded me of Obama's ad on Billy Tauzin in that case, who was a congressman from Louisiana, who was a Democrat, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so for folks
he went to his just reward when he left Congress after making the pharmaceutical deal for Medicare by going to the pharmaceutical industry lobbying group.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because I wanted to be fair, we mentioned how Trump and RFK Jr. basically lied to their voters and they're just supporting the industry. Obama made an ad called Billy, where he called out Billy Tauzin, who came up with this crooked, you can't negotiate drug prices plan, right? And then Obama promised that he was gonna end it. He had 8 years, didn't end it, didn't try to end it, didn't do anything about it, okay?
Nope.
So another bait and switch, that time on Democratic voters. And Shannon's right, then Billy Tauzin went on to make millions of dollars from those same drug companies. So the corruption is so thick here, you could cut it with a knife. So now there's one other aspect that is not related to the government that's also a little bit scary, and it's physician capture. So I knew a little bit about this before, learned more about it in your piece. So I know they do junkets, and I know they help to push Oxy, for example, et cetera. But tell us a little bit more about how the drug companies do physician capture.
So physicians have been captured in very, very interestingly subtle and clever ways. And you talk about junkets. For a long time, doctors would go on these trips to really nice places like Hawaii and the Caribbean to go to meetings, and all their expenses would be paid. If a physician seemed like they had some sway with their colleagues, they would be invited to become a speaker. The companies called these physicians, in particular, key opinion leaders, KOLs, and they would wine them and dine them and woo them and tell them how great they were and how smart they were and how influential and how important. And then they'd supply them with slides and give them their lecture notes, and they would go out. These doctors would effectively become covert marketers for drugs. And that still goes on, certainly. But the other way that physicians have been co-opted is because the research has been co-opted. So the drug industry pays for the majority of clinical research, and what that is research that involves patients. So there's animal research, there's bench research, doesn't involve any animals at all, and then there's human research, which is called clinical research. And the drug industry pays for the vast majority of it. And they're interested in studies that basically show whether or not their drugs work, and they really want the studies to show that their drugs do work. So they often design the studies, and they have quite a bit of control over how the studies are written up, how they're interpreted. And physicians don't necessarily know this. They don't have time to read the journals really carefully, and so they've effectively been kind of lulled into believing that an FDA approval means something. They often think this, and that the drug companies are basically telling them how to prescribe these drugs and to whom they should prescribe the drugs, and they've effectively been co-opted that way.
Yeah, that's really scary. One, I want to be able to.
Yeah, it should be scary.
Yeah, that's even more scary, honestly, than government capture, because A, you got to be able to trust your doctor, and B, that concept blows up on us during COVID, because then people start going, well, nah, I don't believe the doctors. Yes. Now we're in a lot of trouble when people don't believe the doctors, right?
You're right, and COVID really exposed an awful lot of the fault lines in medicine in so many ways.
Okay, so now Shannon wrote this piece with Gene Lenzer. It's called Science for Sale, How Drug Makers Captured the FDA. You gotta read it. We have the link in the description box wherever we put up this video. So please check it out. But now, Shannon, I wanna ask you an unfair question. Okay, so now this is part of, kind of two shows in one, the conversation and the revolution. So they're in the revolution, we try to fix things. You show what's wrong with the government. So your piece brilliantly shows what's wrong with the government here. And it's a massively important issue. We could be taking drugs that are harmful to us because of this corruption, and certainly all of our prices are higher, et cetera. Now you've also written for New York Times Sunday Magazine, Time, The Atlantic, Slate, The Sunday Times of London, Washington Post, et cetera, right? So what I'm gonna ask you is, on the revolution, we try to change things, and I feel like one of the main stumbling blocks to change is mainstream media. That mainstream media sees pieces like yours that are brilliant and great and inarguable, right? And they see the overwhelming corruption, and maybe they cover it from time to time, sparingly, but they have instant and collective amnesia over it. And the next time we're talking about a bill or we're talking about the issue overall, nobody ever says, oh, by the way, dear readers, this entire industry is corrupt and our entire government is corrupt, and this is how they corrupted it, so don't believe what they're saying. They don't. They seem to just go back to, no, but the government is right and don't question it, et cetera. So it's an unfair question because you don't represent mainstream media. But since you worked in media enough in all these places, what's your sense of why they do that?
Oh gosh. I've been freelancing for a really long time. I haven't been on staff anywhere for very, very long, not since the 1990s. And so I have to say that I think a lot of it has to do with people not being woken up to what's going on. I mean, I think journalists are trying their best. I think editors are trying their best. I remember when I first started writing about the antidepressants, and I would pitch a story to an editor, and the editor just wouldn't believe what I was saying, because I was saying, look, these drugs aren't very effective. And part of the reason for that was that a lot of them were on the drugs. I mean, it was, it was hard to persuade people of these very contrarian positions. And so in some ways the mainstream media is really quite conservative in the sense that it doesn't step out on the end of the diving board too much. It doesn't really go against the prevailing wisdom very much. And we saw this with COVID, where there were lots of reasons to question the COVID vaccines. There were lots of reasons to question the decisions about lockdowns. And mainstream media took this position that said, Tony Fauci is right about everything, and the vaccines are good, and the drug, what's the drug that now is around? I don't even remember the name of it, which doesn't work, by the way. You should be taking that drug, and lockdowns are good for, they're going to be what saves everybody. And there were lots of reasons to question that. And it was very, very hard to get the mainstream media to pay attention to the sort of contrarian views. And then once it became politicized, it was even harder. It was like Fox had one position and ABC News had another position.
Yeah, I think it's fair to call that media capture, right?
Well,
so
yeah, except I'm not sure who captured the media. I mean, on the one hand, pharmaceutical companies are big advertisers for parts of the media, but in terms of, I don't know how it happened, frankly. I can't tell you.
Look, I think it's zeitgeist capture, it's groupthink, but the groupthink comes from somewhere. And so on cable news, they have two primary sources of revenue. Politicians, the political ads that run in every cycle. That's why they're so nice to the politicians, because they're their top customer. And the second is drug companies. So those are the two things that are invaluable. On cable news, you're never gonna question those, and I have personal experience. I was criticizing one of the sponsors at MSNBC when I was an anchor on MSNBC, and they told me not to do that. So that's how this game is played. And they hire people that think like them. So if they think, oh yeah, no, corporations are great, the government is great, you shouldn't challenge them, they'll hire more and more people like that until almost all the media is captured by those corporate interests. So last thing here, so how could the government fix this, right? So we've got the government capture we talked a lot about. I know, these are very hard questions.
I'm laughing. The government can't fix it until we fix campaign finance, really. I mean, Congress is not gonna bite the hand that feeds it. And if pharma is the biggest hand, there is no way they are gonna bite that particular hand. So in order to fix the FDA, and this sounds like boil the ocean, because campaign finance has been around. It's sort of the solution to, it's not the solution, but it's an important component to many, many kinds of change that need to happen. We once had good campaign finance laws, and they were eroded over the last 50 years, 40 years. When was Nixon? Anyway, 50, they've been eroded over the years, and now they don't have any teeth, almost no teeth whatsoever. And so that is kind of the beginning of being able to reform the FDA. And but in the meantime, there are a number of small things that can happen. One thing we didn't talk about was the role that patient advocacy groups play. They are incredibly important to decisions at the FDA. They have a lot of power, and they have a lot of sway, both with the media and with Congress, because they seem to be unimpeachable sources. They're patients, after all. And they've been completely captured by the industry. So one of the things that can happen is that we can have rules about disclosure about where their money comes from. They do not disclose that they get a huge amount of their money from the pharmaceutical industry. So that's one thing that could happen. That might pass Congress, and it would help a little.
Yep. So the patient advocacy groups are kind of like the think tanks. And Lewis Powell wrote about this back in 1971, and then they implemented this plan, right? Which was, we'll just get them to. It's brilliant. Yeah, we'll just get them to believe that our experts are the real experts, and we'll just make them say that the corporations are right about everything. And that's literally what happened, right in front of our eyes.
Oh yeah, and I used to be at a think tank, and it was we tried to be nonpartisan. It was the New America Foundation, and it was a very interesting place because we had conservatives and liberals there, and it was a very exciting place because of that. It wasn't just like we're the party line.
Yeah, no, but you know what, Shannon? I'll end on a optimistic, hopeful note, because I now see something that I've never seen before, and I think that might be the answer. So look at this conversation we had where we criticized both Republicans and Democrats, politicians, and we gave credit to both Democratic and Republican voters, right? And so the Republican voters want to drain the swamp. The Democratic voters want to end the corruption of money in politics. So we basically agree. We just need, and now online media is breaking the monopoly of mainstream media. And mainstream media is the one that told us, trust the politicians, trust the think tanks, trust all these folks. And now that they've lost credibility, I believe that a revolution can actually begin. And I don't mean it, of course, in any physical or violent way. I mean it in a political way, right? And I think that both sides voters are waking up and realizing we've been had, we've been took, and we got to get our government back. And I think we can unite to do campaign finance reform. And if we do, voila.
That would be the revolution. That would be the beginning of the revolution. That would be pretty amazing.
All right, I'm going to work on it.
From your mouth to God's ears, as the saying goes.
More importantly, from my mouth to the American voters' ears. So we can rise up together.
Yes.
Or from all of our mouths, of course. Now, guys, Shannon's piece is brilliant. You got to check it out. It's called Science for Sale, How Drug Makers Captured the FDA. It's at The Lever, but we'll put the link down below in the description box. So go check it out. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I love real journalism. All right, we'll see you guys on Monday.